I have a sweet at the end of the world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Good Times. Boss, please don't do this next time. After helping Jiang Chen to open the paralyzed power armor and looking at the stripped left arm armor, Chen Weiguo said with a wry smile, "Isn't it okay?" Haha. Jiang Chen laughed dryly. Although he knew that his behavior was indeed a bit reckless, it was absolutely impossible for him to admit it to his subordinates. A freight truck drove over and lifted the body of the mother of Deathclaw onto the truck. Several soldiers who had worked in the hunting team skillfully dug out the subcrystals from the back of the monster's head. The green and black crystal block was scanned with a special instrument, and a total of 290 subcrystals were found. In terms of energy content, this mother of Deathclaw is already the top of the dangerous species among the alien species. If it is greater than 300 subcrystals, it can only be classified as an extremely mutated creature. For ordinary survivors, these 290 subcrystals may be a considerable fortune, but for Jiang Chen, these subcrystals are really nothing. His half-scrapped power armor cost more than 10,000 subcrystals. As for the body of the mother of Deathclaw, it will be taken back to the fishbone base, soaked in formalin for a whole month, taken out and plugged with a back door, and then poured with cement from its mouth. It will be made into a statue, and will forever crawl in the square in front of the community center, stepped on by Jiang Chen in power armor, to praise the bravery of the leader of the fishbone base. Even the most vicious and dangerous species in the wasteland, the mother of Deathclaw, can't do anything to our leader, so what difficulties can stop us from moving forward? Jiang Chen has always attached great importance to the construction of spiritual civilization in the base. The slave chip can control people's life and death, but it can't control people's thoughts. Well, in fact, he doesn't have such a lofty idea, he just wants to show off. The body of the torn soldier can no longer be found. The strong acid in the stomach of the Deathclaw will dissolve the prey within an hour without even finding the bones. Several soldiers gritted their teeth and pulled out a pile of rags and a gold-plated knight's medal from the stomach of the dead claw. These were the only two things left. The torn uniforms and medals will be placed in a wooden box and buried in the public offering of the fishbone base, which is the final resting place of all knights. As for his relatives, they will also be posthumously named as martyrs and will be supported by the fishbone base until their offspring come of age. It was early in the morning when they set out, and it was already afternoon when they returned. After returning to Camp 27 with the troops that came to support, Jiang Chen didn't care about anything else and ran straight to the cafeteria, asking the cook who hadn't collected the pot to make him something to eat. Although he said to make something casually, how could the cook deal with it casually? He used a large pot to fry 3 dishes of small dishes and personally brought them to Jiang Chen's table. Smelling the fragrance, Jiang Chen couldn't help but salivate. After 3 consecutive battles, he was exhausted and immediately picked up the bowl to dig. Jiang Chen saw Chen Weiguo coming over when he was halfway through the meal, so he greeted him. "Have you eaten yet?" "No, I was just about to see if there were any leftovers." Chen Weiguo smiled bitterly. He dropped his bowl halfway through the meal. He had brought people to support on an empty stomach, so how could he be full? "Come, let's eat together." Jiang Chen smiled casually. Hearing this, Chen Weiguo was flattered, but he didn't act pretentiously. He sat opposite Jiang Chen with his bowl in hand. The two chatted casually for a few words, but in the end they got down to business. "Have you searched the area around Lake Mall?" Jiang Chen asked. "We have searched, but only found 2 small-scale scavenger camps. No Deathclaw nests." When he said this, Chen Weiguo was also puzzled. Not to mention that it should still be hibernating at this time. The mother of the Deathclaw usually rarely leaves the nest. Although this guy is violent in combat, he basically doesn't hunt himself. After all, with such a large body, the calorie is consumed by just moving a few times and not a small number. As the core of the tribe, there are naturally countless pursuers who offer tribute to it in exchange for the right to mate. Although genetic analysis has shown that the death claw may be a mutation of a certain lizard under radiation, its tribe structure is more similar to that of ants. However, there is no death claw nest near the lake mall, and the mother of the death claw seems to have appeared out of thin air. It must be said that this is very abnormal. What do those scavengers say? They have lived in this area for almost 10 years and said that they have never seen the shadow of the death claw. Chen Weiguo said. Jiang Chen frowned. He always felt that this matter was not that simple. After a guess, the mother of the death claw was most likely lured here by someone. The target of the attack is unlikely to be himself. After all, his appearance there can only be said to be an accident. If you think about it this way, the death claw should be going to Lin Chao or the people of the Crimson Chamber of Commerce, but he happened to kill that group of people first, and then ran into the mother of the death claw who came to clear the scene. However, there are too few clues, and I'm afraid that I can't figure out anything just by thinking about it. At least we have to wait until the password of the EP chip is cracked, then we will have some clues about this matter. Now the only thing that can be confirmed is that there are only two forces fighting for something. The Crimson Chamber of Commerce, the Cyborgs, the Rebel Alliance, the Mutants, and the Twilight Church, and possibly the Northern Union District. This Wonghai City is really a place of right and wrong. What is hidden here? Jiang Chen shook his head. Let's put this aside for now. Are the test results of the drug out? When leaving in the morning, Jiang Chen said hello to Chen Weiguo and said that he was going to go out for a trip. On the other hand, he left the drug and asked him to take it to the scientific researchers in the shelter through the embassy for testing and analysis. He was very curious about what the drug was. Hearing Jiang Chen asking about the drug, Chen Weiguo's face also showed a solemn look. The analysis results will come out soon. That thing is a kind of psychedelic potion, which was a contraband before the war. Contraband? Jiang Chen frowned. Well, it is said to be extremely harmful to society. This is the analysis report. Chen Weiguo took out a folded note from his pocket and handed it to Jiang Chen. It's a pretty weird thing. Jiang Chen held the note and read it. Good time. As the name of the drug describes, the user will have a good time for one day. The clinical reaction is that the user will have hallucinations, completely brought into a certain role at a certain point in time, and enjoy a beautiful life that does not belong to him. The drug emerged in 2151 and spread among the middle and low income groups with the wave of the economic crisis. Because it does not have pharmacological addiction, it did not attract the attention of government agencies at the first time. It was not until an accident occurred that a down and out middle-aged man stood in the middle of the street, hugged a trash can, and kissed it madly, blocking the traffic, which attracted the attention of the authorities. Psychological addiction was also added to the drug management regulations for the first time. So that's why Menkan was standing stupidly under the platform waiting for the bus. It turned out that he was really in a hurry to go to work. Seeing the end, Jiang Chen threw the test results on the table. Is this drug available in the 6th block? I haven't seen it. Chen Weiguo shook his head. Catch them if you see them. You give orders on this matter. Forget it. I'll give orders myself. You and I will go back to the fishbone base tomorrow. After the meal, Jiang Chen put away the bowl and chopsticks. Boss, what's wrong? Are you really going to leave shelter 027 alone? Seeing that there was no one around, Chen Weiguo hesitated for a moment, but finally made up his mind and asked, "Oh, do you have any better ideas?" Jiang Chen smiled casually and asked casually, "The energy has been delivered to the camp, but I haven't delivered it yet. We can completely replace the delivery person with a soldier when the delivery is made and destroy the gate generator after entering the door so as to capture the shelter." Chen Weiguo lowered his voice and whispered to Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen heard this, but suddenly laughed. Looking at Jiang Chen in confusion, Chen Weiguo didn't know what was wrong with his plan. After laughing twice, Jiang Chen stopped and looked at Chen Weiguo and asked, "What is the success rate?" 50%. After hesitating for a moment, Chen Weiguo estimated conservatively. Shaking his head, Jiang Chen reached out and patted his shoulder. "Send the fuel rods to them, and then we'll leave here. It won't take a month, and the shelter will be mine." Chen Weiguo was stunned. He didn't know where his boss got his confidence from. but looking at his expression, he didn't seem to be joking. P.S. For a detailed description of general alien species, dangerous species, and extremely mutant creatures, see chapter 29 of volume 1. I guess I'm the only one who remembers it now. For the timeline, see chapter 2 of volume 1, chapter 302 mission. Jiang Chen provided the shelter with 10 subcrystal fuel rods. The specifications of this fuel rod are similar to those of a 100mm fusion core, but the content is not 1 gram of tritium for nuclear fusion reaction, but 1000 subcrystal fragments, which is an enlarged version of the fuel rod used in the power armor of the end times. The output power is also similar to that of the fusion core, but the energy is only 1/10 of that of the fusion core. These 10 subcrystal fuel rods are probably enough to sustain the shelter's energy consumption for a month, and Jiang Chen led his men to deliver them underground. I will not give you the hope of storing energy for the winter. Also, if your scientific research efficiency slows down, I will reduce your supply. While delivering these 10 subcrystal fuel rods, Jiang Chen also explained the research and development tasks to them. Design a self-propelled artillery with light armor, high mobility and strong firepower as an improved version of the Jagdtiger. It is indeed a bit rustic to use a truck chassis to pull a cannon. Since there is a condition to replace it with better armor, Jiang Chen will naturally not miss this opportunity. Without the constraints of order, this is the most reasonable choice. Han Junhe just nodded calmly to Jiang Chen's threat. Don't you want to fight for more benefits? Jiang Chen smiled. No need. Han Junhe shook her head. Crisis can keep people awake. Moreover, she knew very well that even if she asked, Jiang Chen would never give in on this point. Haha, a wise choice. But to be honest, this is the first time I have met such an interesting opponent. Jiang Chen smiled and turned to get on the elevator. Han Junhe did not deny the word opponent. He looked at Jiang Chen and blinked calmly. Am I interesting? Of course, not everyone can get rid of the shackles of human nature and think purely with reason. I have to say that you are a talent. Are all pack colonels of this level? Jiang Chen sighed. If so, then pack is too terrible. Does this have anything to do with military rank? Han Junhe asked back. Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, of course it has nothing to do with it. I have also seen some colonels, majors and other officers in other places. Their brains are not all very bright. Some are obsessed with technology, some are arrogant and conceited. I'm just curious. Where? Han Junhe asked another question. In my back garden. Jiang Chen laughed and said a truth that could be easily misunderstood. Your back garden must not have to worry about survival. Han Junhe said. She automatically translated the back garden into the fishbone base, and those colonels were just titles he casually awarded. You are right. Although there are hidden worries, they are not very serious. Jiang Chen nodded, but he was talking about something in another world. He had not experienced the irreconcilable economic crisis caused by the energy crisis in 2150, and he was not a sociologist, so he could not imagine what kind of scene would develop into when countries were in extreme opposition. That's really enviable. Han Junhe said expressionlessly. Can I ask you another question? Ask. Han Junhe said briefly. What on earth is it that compels you to go against me? Is it the dignity of a soldier, or loyalty? But if there is no humanity, would there still be these boring things? Besides, pack no longer exists now. Jiang Chen said with a smile. Han Junhe did not answer directly. Do you understand the word responsibility? I see, then I understand. Jiang Chen smiled and turned around to walk into the elevator without saying goodbye. Looking at the direction of the elevator rising, Han Junhe frowned slightly. Back on the surface, Jiang Chen handed over the defense of the base to Cheng Weiguo's adjutant Wang Xiaowu and ordered him to pay attention to the situation of the underground shelter at all times and contact the embassy staff every other day to ensure the safety of Zulu and her staff stationed in the number 027 shelter. Hearing Jiang Chen's instructions, Wang Xiaowu was puzzled at first, because for the time being, the garrison at the base and the blueskins in Camp 27 were getting along well. However, Jiang Chen did not explain the inside story to him, but just repeatedly reminded him of one sentence. If the elevator breaks down, or something else unusual prevents the surface from communicating with the underground, you can just contact me directly. Yes, Marshal. Although still confused, Wang Xiaowu didn't say anything more. Nodding, Jiang Chen was very satisfied with his work attitude. You should pay attention to this matter yourself, and don't let other people know. After giving the last sentence, Jiang Chen turned and left the headquarters of the garrison in the camp, walking towards the central open space. The construction of the wall has been completed by a quarter, and it is expected that the main project will be completed in a week. These days, the soldiers of the Fishbone base have scouted the terrain of Sun Jiao and found no overly powerful predator groups. Although there are 3 armed groups with strengths comparable to the once annihilated Grey Goo mercenary group, and their nature is still unclear. With the current strength of the Fishbone base, there is no need to care about those small shrimps. In order to reduce variables, Jiang Chen has already told Wang Xiaowu not to pay attention to them before the construction of the wall is completed. Jiang Chen and Cheng Weiguo greeted the soldiers who had already lined up in the center of the camp and walked towards the camp gate. Old Cheng, how about we make a bet? After getting on the car and looking at the gate of camp number 27, Jiang Chen suddenly laughed. Haha, boss, you are joking. I have nothing to bet with you, except a few packs of cigarettes. Cheng Weiguo said with a smile. As for food, everyone knows that Jiang Chen has no shortage of food. Hearing his subordinates say this, Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment, and then laughed. Ahem. Speaking of this, I have been thinking about a problem recently. Hearing that the leader was looking for him to discuss something, Cheng Weiguo immediately put away his hip-hop expression and became serious. Don't be so serious, just refer to your opinion. Jiang Chen waved his hand and took out 2 cigarettes from his pocket. He handed 1 cigarette to Cheng Weiguo and lit one for himself. What do you think of the living conditions of the survivors of the Fishbone base? He has been thinking recently that the Fishbone base has grown so big. Should it open up the market economy? For example, pay everyone a salary and then use the salary to buy food in the base or something. However, Cheng Weiguo didn't think too much about it. He just felt that the boss was so considerate of his subordinates, and he was moved and spoke quickly. Everyone is well fed and well clothed, and they are all living well. Jiang Chen smiled when he heard this and realized that in his position, he would probably get the same answer no matter who he asked, so he stopped talking. Speaking of which, boss, I wonder what bet you are going to make with me? Cheng Weiguo asked. Hearing this, Jiang Chen smiled, stuck his cigarette butt out of the window, and shook the ash at the gate of camp number 27. Within a month, if no shots are fired, this shelter will belong to me. Finally, after sending away the plague god and returning to the shelter, Han Junhua secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she always felt that the way he looked at her was very abnormal. It was very strange, not like hostility. Instead, it seemed like mockery. Shaking her head, Han Junhua walked through the archway and walked towards her office. As expected, a middle-aged man with an unhappy face stood at the door. Since we have obtained energy, why don't we immediately resume normal material supply? Material supply will be gradually restored, but the supply will be tilted towards scientific researchers. Han Junhua said lightly. Why? Wu Yaguo questioned. Because we are working for others. Han Junhua did not stop, bypassed Wu Yaguo, and opened the door of the office. When the shelter was closed, everyone's work was very easy, and most people didn't even have to work. The production facilities are highly automated, and water and food can be obtained by supplying energy. There is no interspecies competition in a closed social environment. Lazy work habits have long been deeply rooted in the past 20 years. Although many people are high-tech talents, lazy people, no matter how knowledgeable they are, can hardly exert their due scientific research efficiency. Now the energy stored in the shelter has been consumed, and the door has been opened. The energy of the Fishbone base is not provided free of charge. Maintaining the original egalitarianism will only make everyone die in laziness. Who created all this? Han Junhua's attitude of ignoring made Wu Yaguo very angry. He stretched out his hand angrily and wanted to grab her shoulder. However, before the hand touched her shoulder, he felt a pain in his leg. His vision turned upside down, and he fell heavily to the ground. A gun was pressed against his head, and Han Junhua shook off the hand that was pinching his arm. From now on, the shelter council is dissolved. I will use the highest authority of the director to revoke all the authority granted to the residents' representatives by the former director. Okay, Ms. Han Junhua. The sound of electricity came from the broadcast above her head, and the main control terminal of Shelter 027 had approved her decision. You can't do this. Wu Yaguo's face turned pale. But I can. After putting away the pistol, Han Junhua walked into the office and closed the door. The energy crisis has been resolved, and the residents' emotions have returned to stability. It's time to clean up this mess. After entering the door, Han Junhua saw Academician Qin standing in front of the desk. What's the matter? She asked briefly, and sat back at the desk. Well, I heard. Did you send Director Zhang's daughter to serve as an envoy to the Fishbone base? Academician Qin hesitated for a moment and spoke slowly. Zhang Yazhu, it seems to be called this name. The baby that Zhang Kaiming, the former director of the shelter, took in with a leniency. Well, she has a good character, and is very cheerful. Since she was born in the shelter, she doesn't have any unrealistic ideas, so she is very suitable for this job. It is enough to make a mistake only once. It was a mistake to send Jiang Chen to the ground as a negotiator of the advanced team. People who have experienced the prosperity before the war, seeing the survivors struggling on the ruins, can hardly guarantee that they will not develop a superior mentality. But people born in the shelter are different. They really yearn for everything on the surface, and they don't care whether it is a ruin or not. If we can gain friendship with the Fishbone base and peacefully merge into the Fishbone base in the future, the 027 shelter can also have a certain status in it. This is the best result Han Junhua can imagine. Seeing that Academician Qin had not left yet, Han Junhua stopped the work at hand and raised his head to ask, anything else? Well, there's a letter. My old friend asked me to pass it to you. Academician Qin handed over the wrinkled envelope. Glancing at the signature, Han Junhua took the envelope. Why give it to me now? She asked casually as she opened the letter. Because I think it would be more appropriate now. First of all, I repent for my actions. But I won't regret it. I can't lead the residents of the shelter to the end. Under my leadership, they will only go to destruction. Perhaps after ordering the execution of all intruders, I should have executed the baby. But I can't do it. I'm a coward. I choose death, and I should have died a long time ago. Human nature is just a burden to survival. I remember you once said this to me. If my death can awaken a strong enough leader in advance, perhaps everything will not be too late. Zhang Kaiming, to my colleagues. The fingers holding the letter trembled, and Han Junhua took a deep breath and hid the sadness behind the mask. It was the sadness of the mission. Chapter 303. That's just a bubble. Somewhere 3,000 meters underground in Wanghai City, there is a strangely shaped shelter. The reason why it is called strange is that it has neither living area nor ventilation equipment, only machines with electricity and flickering signal lights. It is precisely because of this that this space of about 500 square meters is filled with strong ozone. The periphery of the room is surrounded by a circle of devices that look like domed chambers. However, if you look closely, you will find that it is not a domed chamber in the traditional sense, because there is no trace of ice crystals on the glass cover. The environment inside the cabin is not ultra low temperature, but inert gas. Naturally, it is not a living person, but a machine. In the center of the room stands a huge main control computer. Under the silent screen is a cylindrical culture tank, in which floats a human brain. The bottom of the main control computer is spread with evenly thick and thin pipes, leading to various facilities in the shelter. The brain is like a spider standing in the center of a web, controlling everything attached to this spider web. This shelter is not the property of Pan-Asia Cooperation, so it is not included in the numbering sequence. To be precise, it does not belong to any government agency. It is a private shelter built entirely by an individual. Lin's shelter, that's its name. Before the war, it was not uncommon for rich people to spend money to build a shelter for themselves. Although this shelter is a bit strange. Suddenly, the light at the bottom of a domed chamber lit up, lighting up the space that had been silent for who knows how long. No 04 is missing. Start the backup component. Squeak. The sound of air leakage came from the gap of the domed chamber, and the chamber door slowly opened. A man slowly opened his eyes and woke up from hibernation. The dim fluorescent light illuminated the face. This man was Lin Chaoan, whose neck was torn off by Jiang Chen. At this time, the screen of the main control computer also lit up. A white-haired, kind but majestic face appeared in the center of the screen. Looking at Lin Chaoan, the old man on the screen said slowly, "Do you know what to do?" "Of course." Lin Chaoan knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Father." The old man nodded. "Then go." Lin Chaoan stood up. "My father. A group of people who call themselves the Church of Twilight have intervened in Jaya City. Under their interference, the resistance alliance we have supported has suffered heavy losses. Should we do something about them? Don't worry about those escapists. They are just grasshoppers." The old man said. "No matter how high the grasshoppers jump, they are just grasshoppers. Although they are more far-sighted than ordinary survivors, that's all. Although those fools hindered his plan, for the cold machine, there is no concept of revenge. Executing the most efficient option at the moment is the iron rule that the machine should execute." Lin Chaoan nodded. "What about Jiang Chen?" Hearing this name, the old man was silent for 2 seconds, which was rare. "Pay attention." "Yes." Lin Chaoan nodded and took the order and left. The tight supply policy has finally ended, and all the residents of Shelter 027 are relieved. That kind of life is simply not a life for human beings. You can't take a shower, you can't eat enough, and you can only get sunlight for 1 hour in 24 hours. There are many good news, but there is also bad news. First, a scientific research team was established. Military and electromechanical talents were summoned to select a group of experts to design a tank called Hunting Tiger 2nd. No one is willing to do it. Researching such things is very tiring. Originally, their working hours were only 1 hour a day, but after participating in scientific research, their working hours will be increased to 8 hours a day. This is simply torture. Only fools will go. But soon they rushed to go, because the newly promulgated supply policy began to clearly tilt towards scientific researchers. Only those engaged in scientific research can enjoy the supply of organic food. Not only that, the soilless cultivation farm in the shelter will now begin to produce luxury goods such as tea and coffee beans, and these luxury goods are only supplied to scientific researchers. The supplies are constant. So relatively speaking, the supply of unemployed people will be limited. At the same time, any position in the shelter will be subject to a brutal performance elimination system. The work enthusiasm of the researchers was immediately mobilized. There are many talents in the shelter, and no one wants to lose this fat job. However, in contrast, public opinion is boiling to the extreme. After all, there are limited jobs. Before the shelter obtains more scientific research projects, only a few people can enjoy this benefit. Most people can only do physical labor, or have no job at all. No one wants to drink the nutrient mixture that tastes like white wax every meal. Eating too much of that liquid food is really nauseating. Of course, this kind of extravagant idea will only appear in the shelter. For a time, the shelter was full of excitement, but then Han Junhua did something outrageous. She dismissed the residents' representatives and announced the dissolution of the residents' council. This is tantamount to declaring a complete dictatorship. That bitch has no right to do this. Performance elimination? She is the one who should be fired the most. Look at what she has done since she took office. A slightly burly resident who was mopping the floor wiped his sweat, raised his head, and complained to the resident who was also mopping the floor. He chose to ignore that as a leader. Her only ability was to control existing materials, not to create materials out of thin air. Shh. Don't let the security forces hear it. The resident winked at him and lowered his voice. It is absolutely impossible not to miss the old director. At least the old director would not let them mop the floor 4 times a day. What's the point of doing so? Why didn't I find out that she has misophobia before? Who cares? That bitch has a bland face all day long. Do you think she cares about what we, the low-level bugs, think of her? The man cursed. At this moment, a girl in a white dress came over. Are you thirsty? Looking at the two with a smile, Zulu leaned over and shook the water cup in her hand. The 2 men were stunned, with embarrassed expressions on their faces. They should have behaved like gentlemen in front of the lady, but they just cursed her as cousin. Zulu saw their embarrassment smiled, and took out 2 cups like a magic trick, and poured water for them. "Come on, drink some water." "Ah, thank you, thank you." The 2 thanked with red faces, and took the cups in a panic. After drinking the water in the cup in one gulp, the slightly burly man was stunned, and a surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. The man who was drinking the water coughed and almost choked. Actually, this is honey water? Yes. Is it delicious?" Zulu said with a smile. "Yes, it's delicious." The slightly thin man raised his sleeve and wiped his mouth, looking at Zulu gratefully, and said, "There is more here. Drink slowly, no hurry. You are manual workers, and you consume a lot of energy. Drinking something sweet is good for your body," Zulu said softly, while pouring honey water for the 2. "She is just like an angel." The 2 looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you, it's too much trouble for you." The slightly burly resident kept thanking. "Speaking of which, I seem to have seen you at the embassy." The slightly thin resident stood up and looked at Zulu in confusion. "I remember that the supplies on your surface should not be very abundant." "Yang Lin, what do you mean?" The slightly burly resident stared at the thin man. "Brother Heyo, I don't mean anything else. I'm just a little curious." Yang Lin smiled bitterly to appease Zhao Heyo's emotions. This guy, he was fascinated by others before he even met twice. Compared with his straightforward friend, Yang Lin was grateful and more rational. "Those are all misunderstandings." Zulu lowered her eyebrows slightly and said with regret, "This is exactly the purpose of my coming here. I hope that through my work, I can resolve the misunderstandings between us. It seems to be true. After all, no one has really taken the surface. They are all listening to Han Junhua's nonsense. Who knows if she is just looking for a pretext of foreign invasion to consolidate her dictatorship by creating class conflicts." Thinking of this, Yang Lin also doubted himself. Originally, he was neutral about Han Junhua, but now he began to lean towards the opposite side. Did the people of the Fishbone base really come with the purpose of war? Is the energy shortage of the base really to the extent that the supply has to be cut? Speaking of it, the director seems to have never explained it to people. Even the details of the negotiation, they only knew the result. Unlike Yang Lin's complicated inner thoughts, Zhao Heyo simply cursed the dictator in his heart. Compared with this angel, she was simply bad to the core. "I'm really sorry for wasting so much of your time. My free time seems to have ended here." Zulu put away the water cup, said with a smile, and made a goodbye gesture. "No, I won't delay you," Zhao Heyo said hurriedly. However, before he finished speaking, the movable door in the corner of the corridor opened. "People over there, what are you doing?" The security force came over quickly and stood in front of Zulu, his eyes wandering between the 3 people. "What did she ask you?" The security force looked at Yang Lin. Before Yang Lin had time to speak, Zhao Heyo spoke first with cold sarcasm. "She asked if our work was hard. She did what she should have done for your master." The security force glared at him, said nothing, and just looked at Zulu. "Please complete the inspection with our company, and please cooperate with our work." "Of course," Zulu said with a smile, and then let the soldier follow behind her like a tail, walking to the other side of the corridor. "Are you crazy? You have offended the security forces. Aren't you afraid of being fired?" Yang Lin pulled his friend and whispered to blame. However, Zhao Heyo did not speak, but just stared at Zulu's leaving back. "Yang Lin, do you believe in angels?" "What? She is my angel," Zhao Heyo said stupidly. "You are crazy." Yang Lin couldn't help but complain. Although he said that, Yang Lin did not deny the beauty of the ambassador. That beauty comes not only from the appearance, but also from the heart. Especially in comparison with someone, that beauty is simply dazzling. However, what the 2 did not know was that it was just a bubble. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, Snow at Dusk. When the convoy returned to the base, it was already evening. After getting off the car, Jiang Chen did not go to the community center cafeteria with Cheng Wei Guo and the others to eat, but went straight back to the villa. Just as he hung the winter clothes on the hanger, Sun Jiao came up to him with a complaining look on her face. "Why do you look so sullen? Don't you miss me?" Jiang Chen put his hand on Sun Jiao's waist with a wicked smile and put his lips to her ear. Sun Jiao blushed, but soon raised her eyebrows and bit Jiang Chen's earlobe in revenge. "What did you do outside?" I swear to God, I definitely didn't do anything bad in the past 3 days," Jiang Chen said with shame. God and heaven are conscientious. He is obviously becoming more and more moral. Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Sun Jiao rolled her eyes at him unhappily. "Who said that?" As she spoke, the worry returned to her face. "Can't you be more careful? After all, you are now the leader of a faction. It's not the Stone Age. How can a marshal rush to the front?" So that's what she was talking about. Jiang Chen couldn't help but look a little embarrassed, and he touched his nose and looked away. "Well, I will pay attention next time." Fighting with the Mother of Death claws was completely forced by the situation. If he knew that there was a hornet's nest there, he would not run over there and feel uncomfortable. "You told me the same thing last time. Fighting with the Mother of Death claws. Are you crazy? If you die." Sun Jiao bit her lower lip, and colorful mist swayed in her eyes. Feeling the deep concern, Jiang Chen's heart warmed, and he hugged Sun Jiao apologetically and said comfortingly, "Don't say such unlucky words. I'm fine, right?" Let Jiang Chen hold her. Sun Jiao pouted, put her chin on his shoulder, and said willfully in his ear, "You must be careful in the future." "Yes," Jiang Chen promised solemnly, while holding the soft body. And as she spoke, Sun Jiao's face suddenly turned red, and she rarely showed shyness. "And?" Jiang Chen asked to confirm. "Yes, I don't mean anything else. It's just that you always do such dangerous things." As she spoke, Sun Jiao lowered her head. "How about?" The red lips moved shyly, and the voice as thin as a mosquito hummed gently whispered seductively, "How about, next time you do that, you don't need the contraceptive injection." Sun Jiao obviously didn't know the impact of this sentence on the man, and a heat rushed directly to Jiang Chen's lower abdomen. "Baby, don't talk." Her index finger tapped his lips, and Sun Jiao's lips opened and closed, outlining the seductive words in silence. "Kiss me." Jiang Chen couldn't help it, and held Sun Jiao's slender and toned thighs with one hand, and put her around her waist with the other hand, pushing her against the back of the sofa in the living room. But at this moment, Jiang Chen was stunned, and his expression became awkward. On the second floor stairs, Sun Jiao was sitting in a wheelchair, smiling at the two people who were in a good relationship. "Don't worry about me." That devilish smile really looked like Sun Jiao. How could she not care? Such an embarrassing scene was seen by her sister. How could Sun Jiao stay there? She jumped up in an instant and escaped from Jiang Chen's arms. "I'm so sorry, I asked you to accompany me instead of my sister." Sitting in the wheelchair, Sun Jiao turned around and winked at Jiang Chen playfully. The setting sun was slightly slanting, stretching the shadows of the two people. Jiang Chen pushed Sun Jiao, who was sitting in a wheelchair, on the path in the backyard of the villa. Just now, after Sun Jiao ran away, he was originally going to run away with her because he really didn't know how to face Sun Jiao. She is obviously not the same as she was back then, but he did take her virginity. This explanation may be a bit confusing, but perhaps the feelings in his mind are even more confusing than this. However, Sun Jiao called him and asked him to help her go downstairs. Unable to resist the cute eyes that were hard to refuse, Jiang Chen walked back and carried her downstairs. Then it developed into what it is now. Jiang Chen replaced Sun Jiao, who ran away, and pushed her for a walk in the backyard. Although Sun Jiao can walk by herself in this voice-controlled wheelchair, it is more convenient to have someone accompany her in complex terrain. Besides, it is not so easy to describe the moving direction with voice commands. After exhaling a breath of mist, Jiang Chen hesitated for a moment and said, "It's okay. Speaking of which, I've always wanted to apologize to you." "Why do you want to apologize to me?" Sun Jiao blinked gently. "After all, I almost killed you, and the one you love, and you were angry, and took revenge on me for not confessing. It's better to say, I should thank you for not killing me." Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment, and then smiled after a long time. "Thank you. Regardless of whether the words were sincere or not, Jiang Chen felt better when he heard that she didn't hate him. Sun Jiao blinked gently and didn't respond, but just quietly looked at the falling snow on the dead branches beside the path. Speaking of which, are you feeling better now? Jiang Chen asked softly, looking at the tranquility on her face. Hearing this, Sun Jiao's mouth curved. What part? If it's physical, you can't move below the shoulders. According to Linling, her current condition is brain damage, which is more troublesome than nervous system damage. There was no damage to the spinal nerves, and there was no abnormality in the body functions, but the body parts below the shoulders could not move. This feeling was like forgetting how to use the arms and legs. This symptom was very troublesome. Neither the fishbone base nor the sixth block had the conditions to perform similar brain repair surgery. However, Jiang Chen had already issued a reward through the prosthetic leg tavern. If anyone could get a complete set of surgical equipment, he would receive a commission of 5,000 sub-crystals. A big reward will always attract a brave man. I believe that after a while, these troublesome problems will be solved. Mentally, this question was so strange that the expression on Jiang Chen's face became strange as soon as he said it. Sun Jiao tilted her head with her long black hair slightly tilted. Why do you ask that? Because, haven't you recovered your memory? It's really a bit presumptuous to ask this. You'd better pretend that I didn't ask. Jiang Chen said with a wry smile. Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Sun Jiao just smiled. What do you think I should look like? Jiang Chen was about to say, of course, remove the brainwashing, as Sun Jiao's sister, but the words were choked there when they reached his lips. Looking up at the sunset in the distance, Sun Jiao continued, for a long time, there have been two figures fighting in my mind, competing for control of my body. One side is me as a believer, and the other side is me as a sister. Isn't it strange to say that? At the end of her words, Sun Jiao looked back at Jiang Chen and smiled shyly. No, it's not strange. Jiang Chen shook his head, looked into her eyes, and waited for her to continue. Actually, I've thought a lot these days. No matter which me it is, it's actually me. But that you is brainwashed, Jiang Chen couldn't help but say. What exactly is brainwashing? Jiang Chen couldn't understand the deep meaning of this sentence, so he didn't answer, but looked at her in confusion. People live in the world and receive signals from the outside world all the time. A ray of sunshine, a gust of wind, an occasional falling snow, a warning. How to define what is brainwashing? Then you are now. Maybe it's the fusion of two personalities. Maybe it's easier to understand this way. Sun Jiao blinked and said playfully. It's hard to imagine that she can laugh so cheerfully when she is obviously a victim. Don't you hate those people? But after all, they locked your memory with a chip. Jiang Chen asked. Sun Jiao shook her head and looked at the sunset in the distance again. The deep red flames were no longer dazzling, just like a torch that was about to go out. What is after dusk? Looking in the direction Sun Jiao was looking, staring at the dim yellow, Jiang Chen pondered for a while and said softly, it's night. Sun Jiao nodded, looked at the setting sun, and said softly, that's right. So, they are just a group of poor people, believing in the end of the Earth's civilization, vowing to stay away from the falling sunset, devoting all their life's efforts to forge the ark that carries the new civilization, abandoning their homeland and sailing towards the endless cold night. Even if they succeed at all costs, will the future that awaits them be dawn? Poor people, why hate poor people? Chapter 305, Won't you feed me? When Sun Jiao was sent back to the villa, the sun had already set. Yao had already prepared the meal, and together with Linling, she served the delicious meal to the table, while Sun Jiao took on the responsibility of finding someone. However, things did not go so smoothly. Sun Jiao searched the entire villa, but could not find the missing Sun Jiao and Jiang Chen. She was so worried that she even went to the basement to walk around. Perhaps because she happened to be blocked by the dead branches in the backyard, she did not see the two people walking in the backyard from the window. Seeing the two people appearing in the living room in such a harmonious relationship, Sun Jiao's face flashed with suspicion, and her eyes repeatedly wandered between the two people. What happened to you? Ahem, don't ask so strangely, okay? Jiang Chen said with shame. Well, I always feel that the atmosphere between you is a little unusual. Pinching her chin, Sun Jiao nodded seriously. That must be your illusion. Jiang Chen complained. We just took a walk in the backyard and chatted for a while. Nothing else happened. Sun Jiao blinked and said to her sister. Although she was still a little suspicious, Sun Jiao still trusted her sister. She chose to believe it for the time being. She nodded and looked at Jiang Chen and said, okay, let's not talk about this for now. You should go to eat quickly. I'll send Sun Jiao upstairs and feed her the nutritional mixture, and then I'll come back. As she said that, Sun Jiao walked towards Sun Jiao, ready to take over Jiang Chen's position. Speaking of which, sister, shall we sleep together tonight? Sun Jiao blinked and asked her sister with an innocent expression. Thinking of the unavoidable cum shot with Jiang Chen tonight, Sun Jiao was about to say no, but soon realized the playful smile on her sister's face. Sun Jiao's face immediately turned red, and she glared at her in shame and anger. How dare you tease your elder sister? Humph, I won't feed you anymore. Woo woo, elder sister, I was wrong. Please forgive me. Sun Jiao blinked her eyes and said to her elder sister in a playful way, please your brother-in-law. Sun Jiao made a vicious face and turned back to the dining room. Looking at the direction where Sun Jiao left, Jiang Chen couldn't help but smile with relief. Since that night, she has become much more cheerful. I accidentally pissed off my elder sister. I have to trouble you to carry me to the second floor. Looking at Jiang Chen on the side, Sun Jiao stuck out her tongue mischievously and said, no trouble. Jiang Chen smiled and shook his head. He held the armrest and rear axle of the wheelchair and easily lifted the wheelchair and Sun Jiao sitting on it. Speaking of which, you two sisters have a really good relationship. After placing the wheelchair steadily on the floor of the second floor, Jiang Chen asked casually. Sun Jiao's face flushed, and she gently closed her eyes. Well, because we are each other's only relatives in this world. So, as she said that, she opened her eyes and looked at Jiang Chen mischievously. So, you must make my sister happy. That's for sure. Jiang Chen said with a smile, pushing the wheelchair and sending her back to the room. Sun Jiao was the first person he met when he came to this world, and also the first woman in his life. No matter what, he would make her happy. After entering Sun Jiao's room, under her guidance, Jiang Chen took a box from the cabinet. Compared with the E-level nutritional mixture that most survivors drink, the A-level nutritional mixture made of vegetables, fruits and animal protein does not taste bad. However, Jiang Chen is probably the only one in this world who would be so extravagant as to use fresh food to make nutritional mixture. Really not eating together? Yao's cooking skills are great. Jiang Chen asked. Although he couldn't use his hands, he could still eat if someone fed him. Sun Jiao smiled. It will be very troublesome for me to eat. I have to use a catheter just to relieve myself. If I relieve myself, it will be very inconvenient. At the end of her words, Sun Jiao's cheeks were slightly red. Jiang Chen's expression was also a little embarrassed, and he looked away. It seemed that he asked a very important question. Taking out the test tube of nutrient solution, Jiang Chen unscrewed the lid, but at this moment, his hand froze in the air. Sun Jiao closed her eyes slightly, raised her slightly open red lips, and a hint of bright red could be seen in the gap. Aren't you going to feed me, brother-in-law? Seeing that Jiang Chen didn't move for a long time, Sun Jiao gently opened one eye and smiled mischievously. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Jiang Chen gritted his teeth and put the mouth of the test tube to Sun Jiao's mouth. Jiang Chen had no experience in taking care of people, or he ignored the viscosity of the nutrient solution. Since the speed of pouring the nutrient solution was faster than Sun Jiao could swallow it, she frowned slightly, and her delicate throat let out a labored whimper. Woo woo, cough cough what? What's wrong? You didn't choke, did you? Jiang Chen quickly stopped what he was doing, but at this moment, he noticed the thick liquid flowing out of Sun Jiao's mouth, her throat swallowing gently, and her innocent expression. Damn, it's so evil. Jiang Chen felt ashamed of his perverted thoughts. No, it's okay. Brother-in-law's actions are a bit rough. After finally swallowing the thick liquid in her mouth, Sun Jiao smiled. Well, how about I ask your sister to feed you? In order to hide his embarrassment, Jiang Chen calmly put his legs together and smiled awkwardly. No. The pouting little mouth turned into a crescent, and Sun Jiao looked at Jiang Chen with a coquettish look. Brother-in-law, I'm hungry. This little devil. Jiang Chen's heart was broken at this moment. He was sure that this girl was teasing him. If it was someone else, it would be fine. At most he could just push it off. But she was her sister, and he had already made a mistake once. He gritted his teeth and fed her the remaining nutrient solution. With a tangled and charming mood, Jiang Chen put away the box and prepared to leave. Looking at Jiang Chen's back, Sun Jiao whispered, "Can I have a private word with you?" Well, of course I can. Jiang Chen stopped and turned around. But is it necessary? There's no one here. Although he thought so, Jiang Chen still followed her wish and leaned over to put his ear next to her. Feeling the gentle airflow beside his ear, he felt a little itchy at the base of his ear. Sun Jiao's cheeks were flushed, and she took a deep breath, smiled wickedly, and said, "If my sister is pregnant, I can help you on her behalf. Although my body can't move." When she was in the living room, she heard the conversation between the two. I don't know what kind of mood she was in, but she said this sentence in a wicked way. As expected, the expression on Jiang Chen's face froze instantly, and he fell into a subtle panic. Little girl, what are you thinking about?" Not knowing what to say, Jiang Chen scratched her nose fiercely and fled in a hurry. Looking at the closed door, Sun Jiao smiled and gently closed her eyes. After tasting the sweetness in her mouth, a blush appeared on her face. A very gentle person. Although I know it is wrong to tease the person my sister likes, but that kind of immoral feeling is simply. The smile on her face is still peaceful. However, the catheter under the wheelchair has moved a section of silver-colored liquid column less than 1 centimeter. Judging from the color, it is definitely not urine. Chapter 306 almost got the wrong. When Jiang Chen came downstairs to the dining room, Sun Jiao and the others had already started eating. Just from the dishes on the table, there was no trace of the atmosphere of the end of the world. Especially the plate of pig's trotters that had turned waxy red. Just looking at it made Jiang Chen's appetite growl, and he couldn't wait to walk to the table. Perhaps because she was used to the delicious cooking of Yao, Sun Jiao's eating was much more elegant than when she first met Jiang Chen. Looking at her leisurely and small mouthfuls of food, Jiang Chen really couldn't connect her with the barbaric woman who didn't even let go of canned soup half a year ago. Linling was still digging at the rice without any ladylike image, completely ignoring the late Jiang Chen. The action of wolfing down the food was as if she wanted to make up for the food she hadn't eaten in the past 20 years. Seeing Jiang Chen coming, Yao obediently filled a bowl of rice for Jiang Chen, and then held the spoon and served him a bowl of hot pork ribs and lotus root soup. Seeing Yao's well-behaved appearance, Jiang Chen rubbed Yao's hair lovingly and said with a smile, "No need to bother, I can do it myself." Being rubbed on the head by Jiang Chen's big hands, Yao's cute face showed a soft smile. The lotus root soup is delicious. Moreover, if you drink it in winter, your stomach will be warm. Well, Yao's cooking skills are very good. Jiang Chen praised with a smile. Hearing Jiang Chen's praise, the little Lalita smiled shyly and buried her red face in embarrassment. Lalita control. Sun Jiao and Linling, who were busy eating, whispered at the same time. Those two complaints naturally did not escape the ears of the victim. Hearing this, Jiang Chen looked at Sun Jiao and Linling helplessly and defended himself innocently in his heart. Am I such a beast? After dinner, Jiang Chen went to Yao's room and handed the EP storage card and the task of deciphering the password to the little girl. Hearing that there was another chance to help her big brother, Yao excitedly took the memory card from Jiang Chen and patted her poor chest to promise that she would complete the task. Jiang Chen was very pleased to see Yao so motivated. Compared with Linling, the little girl who kept asking for pudding, the selfless Yao was just like an angel. It was late at night, and Sun Jiao secretly climbed out of bed. Looking at the peaceful sleeping face of her sister beside her, a triumphant smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Wearing the gauze-like pajamas, Sun Jiao tiptoed to the door, quietly left the bedroom and gently closed the door. However, not long after, the door was opened again. A figure who was obviously not Sun Jiao tiptoed in. Awakened by the creak of the door opening, Sun Jiao gently raised her eyelids and looked at the man who walked to the bed. "Where's your sister?" Jiang Chen asked in a low voice with a hint of excitement. "She's sleeping in her room." With a slight curve at the corner of her mouth, Sun Jiao imitated Sun Jiao's voice and whispered. It must be said that the two sisters look really alike. The only difference was also faded by the hazy night. What's more exciting is that they are not only alike in appearance, but also in voice. Just lower your voice slightly, let the light and thin voice have a hint of maturity, and the voice of the two will be almost the same. Hearing that there was no interruption from Sun Jiao, Jiang Chen was naturally overjoyed. With a wicked smile, he leaned close to her ear, blew a breath of hot air gently, and said in an ambiguous tone, "Tonight, I will come inside you until you get pregnant." Sun Jiao's cheeks were red, and her lips trembled slightly, unable to say a word. The quilt was lifted, and soon she felt something drilling in. At the same time, the tight pressure hit her chest. With a groan, Sun Jiao could not help but frown as she felt the fiery heat on her chest. When he was doing that with her sister, were his movements always so direct? For some reason, she felt the urge to play with fire at this moment. If she did not remind Jiang Chen and continued to pretend to sleep, how far would he go before he realized that she was not her sister? Speaking of which, as her memories merged, she had almost no memory of what happened in the basement that day. She only vaguely remembered that he had violently taken away her virginity. The charming thoughts in her mind were playing tricks on her, bewitching her in this way. Anyway, my virginity was also taken away by him, so even if it happened a second time, it wouldn't be a bad thing. But just as she closed her eyes and prepared to let the story continue to develop, the heat on her chest shrank back. "You are not Sun Jiao?" Jiang Chen asked awkwardly, after retracting his hand, although it was basically invisible with the lights off. But that asterisk was obviously wrong. Sun Jiao was over 36D, and this seemed to be just a little bigger than be seeing that she couldn't pretend anymore. Sun Jiao smiled and said, "That's right, brother-in-law." There was a knock at the door. Wearing bare pajamas, Yao rubbed her sleepy eyes, stepped on the bunny slippers, and walked to the door with a click sound, and opened it. "Whoa, it's so late, what's the matter?" Sun Jiao glanced at Yao's neat clothes suspiciously. "Isn't Jiang Chen here with you?" "Well, it would be nice if he was." Yao pouted her lips and said a little awkwardly. The little girl has always been quite dissatisfied with Sun Jiao's behavior of occupying her big brother. It was clearly agreed at the beginning that they would feed the big bad guy together and keep him here as much as possible. However, now, not only did Sister Sun Jiao eat all the delicious meat bones alone, but as a little animal, she didn't even have the chance to drink a mouthful of soup. Not realizing Yao's awkward mood, Sun Jiao tilted her head in confusion. Where did she go? Could it be Linling? Where are you going? Looking at the little girl who suddenly started to walk downstairs, Sun Jiao asked puzzledly. Yao turned around and nodded seriously. "Just in case, let's go to Linling's place to check." Not understanding why Yao suddenly became more motivated than herself, Sun Jiao followed Yao downstairs. Not long after, the angry roar of Linling, who was awakened, came from downstairs. Pushing open the door, Sun Jiao yawned and returned to her bedroom. Finally, after searching the villa, the three people came to the conclusion that Jiang Chen might have returned to the real world to sleep, so they ended the commotion caused by Sun Jiao slipping out of bed in the middle of the night. Climbing back to bed quietly, Sun Jiao confirmed the peaceful sleeping face of her sister, and a gentle smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. She reached out and gently lifted the hair on her forehead, and kissed her on the forehead. "Sister, are you still awake?" Sun Jiao gently opened her eyes, blinking her bright eyes, and looking at her sister. Are you awake?" Seeing her sister suddenly wake up, Sun Jiao shrank back a little embarrassedly. "Yeah, I just woke up. Sorry, did I wake you up just now?" Hearing her sister's words, Sun Jiao shook her head and smiled. No, I just had a dream. Sun Jiao held her sister's hand with concern. Dream? Did you have a nightmare? However, Sun Jiao shook her head again. No, it was a good dream. As she spoke, a blush appeared on her cheeks. He is a very gentle person. Chapter 307, the 307th contradiction. 10 days had passed since Jiang Chen withdrew most of the soldiers. The atmosphere in Camp 27 was the same as usual, but in Shelter 027, located underground, the atmosphere was a bit weird. There was not a single person in the 4 residential areas. The corridors connecting the various blocks were empty, and no one was wiping the almost polished walls and floors with a rag. So where did everyone go? In contrast to the deserted residential area, the open space in the industrial area was crowded with people. Standing on the stairs and looking around, it was a dark mass. According to a rough estimate, except for the 100 residents who had moved to the surface, basically all the more than 1,600 residents in the entire shelter were here. Because of the dense flow of people, the environment here was terrible. There were children crying and indignant conversations. Some people sat in the corner with suitcases, and some people even set up mats on the floor, pretending to live here permanently. About 20 soldiers from the security forces stood on a high place, holding their weapons and ready to fight. This situation was unprecedented. They had never faced it before, and did not know how to deal with it. Fortunately, so far, the residents' emotions were restrained, and no aggressive behavior was made. At this moment, the door opened. Xianfeng walked in, surrounded by 2 soldiers. Not long ago, he was appointed as the commander-in-chief of the security forces by Han Jianhe for his meritorious service in confiscating the nuclear fusion core. He replaced the position of the commander-in-chief appointed by the old director and was responsible for managing the security and defense matters in the shelter. When he heard about the rally in the industrial zone, he rushed over immediately. Seeing the leader coming, the 20 soldiers stood at attention and gave him a standard pack salute. After a simple salute, Xianfeng walked past the row of soldiers and walked to the railing of the stairs. Looking at the excited people, he frowned slightly. What do these people want to do? Xianfeng asked the soldiers around him. They are protesting. The young soldier heard the captain's question and answered truthfully. Protest? Xianfeng frowned. Just as he was about to ask what they were protesting, a roar came from the crowd. We need an explanation. Yes. Let Han Jianhe come out. Looking at those angry faces, Xianfeng was puzzled, but he immediately realized that something was wrong. What are they protesting? Xianfeng asked the young soldier beside him in a low voice. The young man's face flashed a hint of hesitation, but he still gritted his teeth and spoke. Some people say the director set up a program inept to tie the locking authority of the shelter gate to her life signal. That's it? Xianfeng asked in confusion. And, having already spoken, the young man was not afraid that the superior might get angry, and he shook out everything he knew, including Han Jianhe using the director's authority to kidnap the lives of all the residents of the shelter, including the refugee residents council being dissolved without reason, including the residents' demand that she explain all her actions. After understanding the whole story, Xianfeng took a breath. On the one hand, he was shocked by the explosiveness of the news revealed by the rumor, and on the other hand, he was wary of whether there was a conspiracy because the rumor broke out so quickly. Seeing that the commander did not speak for a long time, the young man hesitated for a moment and said, "Commander, what's the matter? Is what they said true?" Xianfeng saw a trace of confusion in the young man's eyes. That confusion made him feel inexplicably panicked. Don't believe the rumors. You stabilize the situation here first, and I will report to the director. After hurriedly explaining the task to the soldiers beside him, Xianfeng turned around and prepared to walk towards Han Jianhe's office. However, at this moment, Wu Yaguo got out of the crowd and stood in front of him. Xianfeng noticed that there was a bruise on his face. The residents need an explanation. Wu Yaguo said loudly, staring at Xianfeng's eyes without fear. The director of the shelter does not need to make any explanation for his behavior, but I believe Director Han will give you a satisfactory answer. Xian Feng had to answer in a very formal way because he was also confused about the situation. But obviously, no one was satisfied with his answer. Really? Haha, I hope so. Wu Yaguo sneered. Can you go back first? Xian Feng knew that he was very popular among the residents, so he lowered his voice and persuaded. Wu Yaguo stared at Xian Feng's eyes. Do you think this is possible, after knowing such a fact? Xian Feng was speechless. His Adam's apple moved up and down, and he turned around and walked away without saying a word. Looking at Xian Feng's departing back, the anger in Wu Yaguo's eyes gradually became stained with a hint of hatred. Someone leaked the news, and the details of the negotiation were completely disclosed. The shelter was in chaos, and no one dared to sleep in the bedroom anymore. No one wanted to be a sacrifice and become a bargaining chip for others to survive. Everyone gathered in the industrial area and slept on the floor together. However, Han Junhua quickly controlled the situation and sent security forces to forcibly disperse the protesters, ordering everyone to return to work within an hour. However, during the forced dispersal, someone shouted this sentence. She is a dictator. She intends to maintain her evil rule by killing everyone. Then, that voice was echoed by almost everyone. That's right. The future of Shelter 027 should be decided by all the residents of the shelter. He's right. The people in Fishbone Base are not as bad as she described. She is a liar. Shouts and roars echoed between the cold steel walls, venting the anger and suspicion in everyone's heart. At this point, it is obvious that the contradiction can no longer be resolved by explanation. The situation got out of control. Han Junhua handled it decisively. He ordered the soldiers to use smoke bombs to forcefully drive away the residents occupying the industrial area. For the stubborn resistors, Han Junhua used her authority as the director to release hypnotic gas into the industrial area and ordered all the unconscious people to be thrown into a small dark room and detained for 10 days. At the same time, she ordered a temporary restriction on the travel of Ambassador Zulu and 5 staff members and hid the news that the shelter was caught in internal conflicts 1,000 meters underground. Then, she sent out security forces to thoroughly investigate the rumor spreaders and issued a curfew order. Anyone who stayed outside the residential area after the lights were turned off would be sentenced to no less than 5 days of confinement. However, it didn't take long for the prison to be full. 5 hours after the incident, this intelligence from Camp 27 was placed on Jiang Chen's desk. At this moment, Cheng Weiguo was standing in front of Jiang Chen's desk, looking at Jiang Chen with admiration. Boss, you are so, what's that word called? Right. Predictable. Facing his subordinate's compliment, Jiang Chen laughed without any modesty. What do you mean by predictable? I was the one who spread the news. Before leaving, he told Zulu that they must build a good relationship with the residents in the shelter and establish an image that is completely opposite to the image promoted by Han Junhua, the invader. In this way, the residents in the shelter will inevitably doubt Han Junhua. Then, through the mouth of a soldier in Camp 27, he accidentally leaked the details of the negotiation to the residents of the shelter who moved to the surface. Once a secret is known by a third person, it is no longer a secret. Soon, the rumor spread from the surface to the underground and spread in the shelter like a virus. At the same time, the rumor was no longer the original version after being passed by word of mouth. What is widely circulated at present is that Han Junhua, the director of the shelter, used the highest authority granted by the shelter terminal to threaten the lives of all the residents of the shelter, threatening the peace-loving Jiang Chen to stay away from the shelter. Otherwise, she will kill the residents of the shelter in batches until she is the last one left, in order to force the merciful Jiang Chen to make concessions. Han Junhua of course clarified this and announced it to all the residents of the shelter through the radio. However, once trust collapses, it is not so easy to rebuild. In response to Han Junhua's clarification, former residence council members headed by Wu Yaguo proposed that Han Junhua make public the record of his use of authority, but were rejected. Because this could not be clarified at all, she took a similar measure, but to a lesser extent. As a result, now the 027 shelter has become a mess. However, what Jiang Chen could not expect was that this moment would come so quickly. In just 10 days, the relationship between Han Jianhe and the residents has dropped to a freezing point. How deep is this resentment? Boss, should we send troops over now to assist the residents' council and help them overthrow Han Jianhe and then take advantage of the opportunity? Cheng Weiguo suggested excitedly. Hearing this, Jiang Chen smiled and waved his hand to signal him not to panic. No hurry. It is precisely because we left that they dared to carry out drastic reforms. Now if we run back again, I'm afraid they won't be able to make trouble. But do those unarmed residents have the ability to overthrow Han Jianhe's rule? Cheng Weiguo asked in confusion. The director of the shelter has all the authority of the shelter, including the release of hypnotic gas into the residential area, the control of the sentry machine guns, the control of the opening and closing of any movable door, and the authority to mobilize all security forces. Cheng Weiguo, who had been in the shelter before, was very clear about this. In this case, without the help of external factors, the residents in the shelter have no chance of winning at all. Old Cheng, how many years has the 027 shelter existed? Jiang Chen smiled. 20 years. Cheng Weiguo answered without hesitation. Yes, 20 years. Even if you were 20 years old then, you should be 40 now, right? Cheng Weiguo looked at Jiang Chen in confusion. Jiang Chen smiled and continued in a relaxed tone. The security forces in the shelter now are no longer the security forces composed of pack soldiers back then. At least, more than half of them should be new recruits, right? Is there any problem with this? Cheng Weiguo asked in confusion. Will those new recruits point their guns at their parents for Han Jianhe? Jiang Chen said with a smile. Chapter 308 Password Cracking. When Jiang Chen came out of the community center, it was already evening. These days, he basically stayed in the community center during the day, familiarizing himself with the details of the base with the help of Wang Qing, the head of the logistics department. As the base's strength expanded, the shortcomings of the existing system became increasingly apparent. At the beginning, the important facilities of the Fishbone base were only 2 warehouses, and it was more than enough to arrange a warehouse manager to manage the materials of the entire base. Zhao Jixi was the only one busy in the canteen, and a large pot of cauliflower-filled porridge could feed everyone. The main task of the 30 survivors in the base was to build houses and repair walls every day. Lu Huosheng, who was in charge of the construction of the base, basically also took on the job of managing the survivors while directing the construction. This simple management model was fine for a small-scale survivor base, but once the population increased, its drawbacks were exposed. Although Jiang Chen did make some reforms during this period, such as establishing a pyramid-shaped citizen hierarchy system, setting up a separate logistics department to distribute base materials, etc., with the 2 population explosions, the Shengxiang town colony and the incorporation of Qingpu survivors, the existing administrative system has shown signs of chaos. Many times, when the base encountered something that no one knew who should take care of or something that was too much to handle, Jiang Chen happened to be away, and basically Sun Jiao helped make decisions. As the leader's wife and former famous lone traveler, her ability and prestige can indeed handle some minor problems. But as the base grows bigger and bigger, this casual decision-making model is obviously not feasible. So, 2 urgent tasks were placed in front of Jiang Chen. Legislation and reform. Law is the foundation of order. The reason why there are no public security problems in the Fishbone base now is that it all depends on Jiang Chen's personal prestige and the absolute constraints of the honor chip on the night class. This constraint will weaken with time and population expansion, so it is not an exaggeration to say that enacting laws is an urgent task. As for the reform, it is also easy to understand, that is, to establish a simple and efficient administrative agency to uniformly manage the Fishbone base and all survivors within its sphere of influence. The sooner these tasks are completed, the better. So these days he basically stays busy until the sun goes down, before going back to the villa. As usual, when he returned home, Yao had already served hot meals on the table. Sun Jiao and Lin Ling also sat at the table, waiting for Jiang Chen to come back and eat. After dinner, Yao excitedly pulled Jiang Chen to her bedroom. After 10 days of hard work, the little girl finally cracked the password and copied all the information in the memory card to a graphene chip. Thank you for your hard work. Jiang Chen took the memory card and rubbed Yao's head lovingly. Hehe. Yao smiled shyly, burying her head and enjoying Jiang Chen's praise, playing with the ribbon on the corner of her skirt. Jiang Chen took the memory card and the graphene chip and was about to leave in a hurry to read the information in it. However, as soon as he turned around, he felt a weak pulling force coming from the corner of his clothes. What's the matter? Jiang Chen asked in confusion, looking at Yao who was pulling his clothes weakly. Well, can I make a very willful request? The cherry-like little mouth opened and closed softly, and the cute face was flushed, as if it was about to bleed. Looking at the shy expression on Yao's face, Jiang Chen, who already understood the little girl's feelings, knew what she was thinking. With a sly smile on the corners of his mouth, Jiang Chen leaned over and held up the cute face, kissing the little cherry that was caught off guard. Woo, woo. Like a frightened little rabbit, Yao tensed up. After a few weak struggles, she soon collapsed in the warm embrace and closed her long eyelashes obediently. It was as if all the strength in her body was taken away by her beloved big brother along with the sweet juice. Jiang Chen, who took full control, sniffed the fragrance from the hair, wantonly ravaged in the softness, and sucked the sweet nectar with his mouth. After a long time, the lips parted. The tip of the young tongue pulled out a transparent thread from Jiang Chen's lips. Yao, who had left Jiang Chen's arms, gasped weakly. With the light in the room, a silvery stain could be seen from the corner of her soft lips, and her cute face was full of embarrassing blush. Admiring the cute expression on Yao's face, Jiang Chen couldn't help but smile and squatted in front of Yao. Are you satisfied? Yao's face turned even redder, and her little mouth opened and closed. Jiang Chen put his ear close to Yao's lips. Actually, I just wanted to hug you, Yao said with a red face. Back in the bedroom, Jiang Chen inserted the graphene chip into the holographic computer and read the encrypted file. The folder was unexpectedly empty, and it didn't store a lot of confidential information as he imagined. An app capability assessment report, an electronic map, a mission briefing and a note. Jiang Chen only glanced at the above average capability assessment report, confirmed that the bearded mercenary's name was He Wenhu, and then deleted the document. Then, Jiang Chen stretched out his finger and clicked on the holographic screen, selecting the electronic map. Generally speaking, this map is no different from the maps of ordinary survivors, but after a closer look, Jiang Chen still glimpsed a clue from this map. A red question mark was marked on the outer position of the city center near Sun Jiao. Jiang Chen frowned. Generally speaking, no survivors would run to the city center. There is a nuclear bomb crater there. Not only are the aliens and zombies extremely dangerous, but the radiation level is also terrifyingly high. If someone really runs there, there is only one possibility: there may be something there. With limited information, Jiang Chen couldn't figure it out for the time being, so he turned his attention to the mission briefing and notes. Cooperate with Lin Chaoan's actions, assist him to enter the 027 shelter, and then bring back the formula of the good times pill. That thing is very important to our business. I believe that many idiots will want to experience the good life before the war. In addition, be more careful when doing things. Find out more about that guy's true and false. You know, it's better to have a formula of this medicine in one person's hands. From this point of view, the people of the Crimson Chamber of Commerce seem to have their own ulterior motives with Lin Chaoan. But no matter what they are planning, Jiang Chen will not give up the 027 shelter. Thinking about it, Jiang Chen closed the mission briefing and then opened the notebook. This notebook seems to be just some fragmentary records, but he still read a lot of useful information between the lines. 01. He always hides from us when he drinks the nutritional mixture. Is there anything worth keeping secret? 02. He still refuses to tell us what is in the 027 shelter. 03. It's terrible. I saw him use the rusty operating table to dissect a living person into a skeleton and then install the parts. Is that a cyborg? I always feel that it is a little different from the description before the war. 04. He is very abnormal sometimes. Of course, my intuition told me that what he did not conflict with our business. but just in case, I still secretly track the two-dimensional coordinates of his signal. 05. He seems to look down on me. It seems that it is not just me. No matter how you put it, it is difficult for people to have a good impression of that contemptuous look. 06. I always feel, I mean it, he gives me a very strange feeling. Sometimes I can't help but think about a question. This guy, is he really a human? Chapter 309, The End of the Rebel Alliance. Seeing the last line, Jiang Chen couldn't help but have a strange look on his face. The bearded man had guessed it right. Lin Chaoan was not a human, but a complete machine. Unlike Lin Ling, who was a cyborg, there was no trace of a single cell on his body. Jiang Chen had confirmed this repeatedly. Even the meat filling the mechanical skeleton was made of silicone with a similar texture to skin. Jiang Chen reopened the map and confirmed the red question mark at the edge of the city center. Is there anything here? Frowning and thinking for a moment, Jiang Chen also marked the location on his map. After putting away the holographic computer, he immediately left the villa. Rushing back to the office of the community center, Jiang Chen called Cheng Weiguo, who had just finished his meal. Not long after, Cheng Weiguo soon appeared in front of Jiang Chen's desk. What's the matter? Jiang Chen opened the map and pointed to the marked area to Cheng Weiguo. I want to send someone to explore this area. Do you have any good suggestions? Downtown. Staring at that location, Cheng Weiguo touched his chin and frowned, saying, it's not like King Poo. The danger of alien species and zombies is a bit high. By the way, can we observe from a high altitude? Jiang Chen was stunned for a moment, and then showed an expression of sudden realization. Yes, speaking of it, there is a helicopter in the Fishbone base. Although it has been converted into a gunship, it should be no problem to perform reconnaissance missions. How is the pilot training going? Jiang Chen asked hurriedly. Chunan is now acting as his agent in the 6th block, and the task of flying the helicopter naturally has to be handed over to other people. 2 have been trained. They were taught by Chunan himself. They just drove the helicopter back from the 6th block some time ago. According to him, although the 2 pilots lack experience, they have almost learned the knowledge of driving. Cheng Weiguo smiled. Well, you pay attention to this matter and report to me as soon as you get the results. Yes. Cheng Weiguo saluted and left. However, at this moment, the mobile phone on the desk suddenly rang. Cheng Weiguo was stunned and stopped. Jiang Chen seemed to have expected something, and a hint of joy flashed across his face. He grabbed the phone, that was as big as a piece of paper, and put it to his ear. Hello. Marshal. The elevator has stopped. Wang Xiaowu's surprised voice came from the other end of the phone. Jia City, dozens of kilometers away. The Church of Dusk and the mutants of Site 7 jointly launched an attack against the Jia City Resistors Alliance. Like orcs from a magical blockbuster, the hideous mutants walked through the ruins. They were wearing steel armor, and the heavy machine guns in their hands and the ammunition belts on their waists emitted a chilling cold light. They walked steadily towards the position of the Resistors Alliance on the opposite side. Behind these soldiers, a mutant and a human stood side by side on a hill of concrete rubble, looking at the faint flickering fire not far away. The mutant was Troy, the leader of the mutant settlement inside 7. The man was Boyu, the leader of the Church of Dusk. I never thought that mutants and humans could unite. Troy grinned his ugly mouth and showed a smile-like expression to the human in a fur coat beside him. With his hands behind his back, the bloodthirsty lion's mane on his collar swayed in the cold wind, and Boyu's mouth also outlined a smile. Common sense says that this is indeed incomprehensible. But we only need to change our mindset a little bit, and we can actually survive. Just like smart dogs and humans. Coincidentally, both sides think so. Mutants need the supplies and firepower provided by the Church of Dusk, while the Church of Dusk needs the fearless warriors of the mutants. The battle in the distance is basically a foregone conclusion. Although there are sporadic human survivors who fight back against the mutants with the help of cover, the fire of resistance was quickly extinguished by the mutants who rushed over. Speaking of which, what is that on your finger? Troy asked casually, after glancing at the blood-red gem on Boyu's finger. Guess. Boyu smiled. It's definitely not a diamond. It's a bit like a crystal, but I've never seen a red crystal. Troy said. It's a nuclear bomb. Boyu said the fact in a joking tone. Grinning, Troy obviously didn't take his words seriously. At this moment, something strange happened. The concrete fragments 10 meters away from the two of them were suddenly lifted and scattered. Go to hell. Traitor of mankind. With a roar, a survivor with a bloody face rushed out of the dust. His expression was hideous, and the wounds with blood crusts cracked because of anger. And in his hand, he was holding a shabby submachine gun. Troy just glanced at the man lightly, then stretched out his hand to protect Boyu behind him, but the hand was unexpectedly gently pushed away by Boyu. Before Troy could be surprised, the man's gun ejected a fire snake and shot towards Boyu. It turned out that he had enough time to be surprised. The green film stretched out a web beside him. The orange-yellow bullets were frozen on the web like mosquitoes. The expression on the man's face froze. Before he could react, a subcrystal flew across his field of vision. The green light suddenly shrank, then expanded, and exploded into a pale green light particle without warning. What a strange ability. Looking at the blood mist splashing around, Troy looked at Boyu and smiled bloodily. We have gone a long way in this regard, Boyu said indifferently, putting his hand back in his pocket. Clean particles are closely related to warp engines. As a staunch escapist, the Church of Dusk has gone a long way in the field of warp engines. Come to think of it, I remember you were planning to attack Wanghei City and look for the 005 shelter in Qingpu. Why did you suddenly change your mind and help us solve the trouble in Jiaxi first? Troy grinned. Because there is a very troublesome force blocking Qingpu, Boyu said. He was referring to the fishbone base, and Troy knew what he was referring to. Thinking of the disastrous defeat in front of Zufeng Highway, Troy's face was also annoyed. It was not because of strength that he lost, but because he underestimated the enemy. However, he obviously still did not recognize the essence of the problem. It was not because of underestimating the enemy, but because of IQ. If the camps were built in a scattered manner, it would be impossible for a bomb to blow up most of the camp. When will we fight back? Troy showed a cruel smile on his face. In that smile, the desire for revenge burned. When you use the survivors of Jiaxi to train a 2,000-man mutant army, the resources I mobilized from the north will almost arrive, and it should be almost done by then, Boyu said lightly. Like Troy, he was also annoyed when the name was mentioned, but he was used to not showing his emotions on his face. Not only did nearly 200,000 subcrystals of military supplies go down the drain, but now he had to change his plan and invest more supplies to help the mutants conquer Jia City to replenish the population. But what hurt him the most was Sun Jiao. More than 10 years ago, the organization had gone through so much trouble to get the sample from Shelter 071 and just lost one. The last few flames on the battlefield were extinguished, just like the life of the Rebel Alliance. Seeing that the war was over, Boyu cast his eyes in the direction of Wanghei City. Jiang Chen, he murmured to himself, and narrowed his eyes. The black pupils cast a faint dangerous light. Chapter 310, Darkness buried deep underground. The riot took place at night. Although there is no such concept as night in the shelter, where the sun cannot shine. Less than 5 hours after the security forces forcibly dispersed the residents of the industrial zone, the detention room of the shelter was filled with protesters. No one can stand sleeping with a sharp knife hanging over their head that may fall at any time. Those vents that no one has ever emptied in the past 20 years have now become black muzzles of guns. Muzzles rooted in people's hearts. It turns out that when everyone can't stand the same problem, people will become braver than they think. The security forces are no more than 100 people in total, with very limited surveillance power, and most of the soldiers were born in the shelter. They have no sense of belonging to the pack. Compared with the unkind Han Junhe, they miss the amiable old director more. They not only feel sympathy for the protesting residents, but even support them in their stance. This kind of sympathy beyond discipline is impossible in the pack army, but they are not the army after all. The Residents' Council was re-established. Although it was not authorized by the shelter terminal, it was supported by all residents. Under the leadership of former Councillor Wu Yaguo, an action plan was passed on by word of mouth among the survivors in the name of justice. Overthrow the dictatorship in 1 hour. Renegotiate in 1 hour. This plan was brewing among a small number of people when the rumor began to spread. However, Han Jianhua knew nothing about what was happening among the people. The external worries have been resolved. The internal troubles must be eradicated in one fell swoop. First, the broken sword. The power system suddenly failed, triggering the emergency mechanism to replace the backup power supply. Although the power outage caused by the power switch was only 10 minutes, these 10 minutes were enough for a lot of things to happen. The entire shelter was in sudden darkness. The elevator was stuck underground, completely cutting off the underground and the surface. The power engine of the shelter gate was destroyed by maintenance workers, eliminating the possibility of Han Jianhua closing the gate. Under the defection of some security forces, all residents retreated to the lobby of the shelter. In this way, even if the power supply was restored 10 minutes later, Han Jianhua's release of hypnotic gas throughout the shelter would be useless. The sword hanging over everyone's head has been completely removed. Next, its punishment. 80% of the security forces chose to side with the temporary parliament, and 20% of the former PAC security forces swore allegiance to the end. A fierce gun battle broke out on the main road of the shelter, and advanced towards the office of the director of the shelter. The residents first occupied the armory, and then liberated the confinement room. Just like capturing the Bastille, the united residents liberated the suppressed warriors. The warriors cheered, and began to arm themselves with the distributed weapons. More than 200 residents wearing gas masks and holding automatic rifles joined the battle. The scale of victory hit the side of all the residents of the shelter hard. Xianfeng led the last 10 soldiers to resist desperately. They were the first batch of soldiers to enter the shelter. 20 years ago, they were a group of young men who had just joined the army, and now they have reached the age to retire. They had made the worst plans, such as facing NATO soldiers who invaded the shelter. However, they never thought that at the last moment of the mission, they would face the residents they were protecting. The feeling of fratricide was suffocating. Xianfeng desperately pulled the trigger, and he tried not to think about the names of those faces. However, he couldn't do it. In the scope, he saw his neighbor's child. He still remembered that the boy once said he wanted to be a botanist and wait until the day when the shelter opened to see how the grass growing on the radioactive soil was living tenaciously. However, he was dead, falling in the pool of blood that had not yet cooled. And him, and even her. Finally, someone couldn't stand the mental torture, and a soldier rushed out of the bunker, holding a rifle and firing wildly. Damn it. Come back. However, Xianfeng couldn't hold him back, and watched his comrade in arms being shot with several blood holes by the mob's bullets. He died, but there was no pain on his face. A fist hit the wall of the bunker hard. Xianfeng gasped for breath, his chest heaving violently. Damn it. Cough, cough, cough. A mouthful of spit mixed with blood splashed on the wall. He didn't know who to curse, nor who to be cursed. The noisy bullets covered all the sounds. At this moment, everyone was dumb. In the director's office, through the bulletproof glass, Han Jianhua silently looked at the war that was so close. Too weak. Not even a small-scale regional conflict. Before the war, she had commanded an airborne mechanized brigade and suppressed a riot planned by NATO on the PAC border. The Wanderers crushing flesh and blood, that was far more tragic than this hell. She didn't know how many times she had seen it. But for some reason, she felt a little heartache at this moment. Academician Kin stood beside her, also silently staring out the window. At this moment, the trembling figure and the young figure formed a sharp contrast. Just like a father and a daughter. After a long while, Han Jianhua asked, "Aren't you going to stand on the side of the people?" Academician Kin shook his head. "I stand on the side of truth." "Really?" Han Jianhua looked at the old man in his twilight years with some surprise. Because the truth is often the most difficult for people to accept, and those who pursue the truth are often lonely. That's really a pity. Han Jianhua looked out the window silently. The sparks of the bullets jumped between the cold steel and flashed in the center of a pair of angry pupils. The soldiers who were still loyal to her were retreating step by step, and they no longer had supplies. Human nature is a burden to survival, but if it weren't for this burden, civilization would not have been born. "Are you trying to say that I was wrong?" Han Jianhua said calmly. "You are not wrong, but you are not right." "Yes, but is it not right?" Han Junho chewed this sentence over and over in her heart, although she knew that it was meaningless to think about this problem now. After a long silence, Han Junho asked, "In fact, you knew from the beginning that this would be the result, right?" He was always more taciturn than anyone else, but he always saw things more clearly than anyone else. She doubted it. Academician Qin did not deny it, but the smile on his face was a little bitter. "Well, I don't deny it. Why?" Han Junho did not look at him, but continued to ask in a voice without any emotion. "I thought you had already discovered it." Academician Qin sighed. Han Junho waited for the old man to continue, but found that he had stopped talking. Even at the last moment. "Can't you tell me the reason?" Han Junho asked. Academician Qin just responded to her with silence. "I have been thinking about a question for a long time. Has the candidate for the director of the shelter been carefully considered?" "You can think so," Academician Qin said softly. "I use the supercomputer of the shelter to re-establish the mathematical model of the population growth curve and energy consumption rate, but the result surprised me. From the beginning, the energy of the shelter was not enough, right?" Academician Qin did not answer, but at this time, silence is often equivalent to acquiescence. Seeing the expression on Han Junho's face, he knew that she had vaguely guessed it. After a long time, Academician Qin sighed and said softly, "Can't you carry out the mission to the end?" There was a hint of pleading in that voice. "Okay," Han Junho replied lightly. Academician Qin asked in surprise, "Aren't you afraid?" Han Junho shook his head. "It's just death." Outside the window, Xian Feng had fallen down. He held the wall with one hand, and blood dripped down his sleeves. Struggling, he raised his pistol and aimed with his left eye blurred by blood. Perhaps the magazine was empty. The black muzzle did not emit flames for a long time. At this time, a mob rushed to him, wielding a fire axe, and chopped off his head fiercely. Blood dripped down the axe blade, and the hero enjoyed the cheers and hugs of the crowd. He raised his strong arm high, and the bloody battle axe was like the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Through the bulletproof glass, Han Junho watched this last scene quietly. She noticed that the man holding the battle axe was grinning at her. It was like the smile of the Statue of Liberty. Human nature is a burden to survival, but if it were not for this burden, civilization would not be born. But the birth of civilization will inevitably be accompanied by bloody barbarism. She seemed to understand something, but in the face of the survival of the entire civilization, one person's understanding cannot change anything. At the end of the mission, "Can I ask you one last question?" Looking at him, Han Junho said expressionlessly. Academician Qin was silent. "Then I'll take that as your consent," Han Junho continued. She walked to the window and gently touched the bulletproof glass. The axe blade slammed into the glass, as if in protest, at the spot where her finger had touched. Feeling the trembling of her fingertips, she slowly asked, "Is the glass of this window built according to laboratory standards?" "Yes." Although there were only 2 words, it comforted Han Junho's cold heart. The mob outside the window saw that they couldn't open the door of the office, so they brought in electric welding guns. From the crowd, she saw Wu Yaguo's face and the bruises on his face. If you release gas at this time, there is a certain chance that the people outside the door will be killed. Academician Qin suddenly said, "Is this also part of the experiment?" Han Junho asked. Academician Qin stopped talking and just gave her the final choice. It was like a pale experimental report placed in front of her. Sample: will a rational dictator, at the last moment of being overthrown, frantically choose to perish with everyone? Closing his eyes, Han Junho thought seriously for a moment. "I won't do that." Experimental results? No. Yeah. Academician Qin nodded, with a relieved smile on his face. At the end of this smile, the door collapsed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311, Naive. The mob rushed in. The butt of the gun hit Han Junho's brow hard, almost knocking her unconscious. Then another kick hit her abdomen, knocking her to the ground. Han Junho was not surprised, or even panicked, because she knew that the pain she would suffer next would definitely be far more than that. Then, the hero rushed up. He raised his axe, grinning, and prepared to chop off her limbs. However, at this moment, Wu Yaguo stepped forward and grabbed the reckless hero. Calm down. Wait a minute. Everyone listen to me. Hearing Wu Yaguo's call, everyone stopped what they were doing. Han Junhe lay on the ground, her face full of bruises and blood. In just 1 minute, she was almost beaten to death by the angry mob. She looked at Wu Yaguo quietly. Of course, she didn't think he was defending her. If he was, he would be the first to come in. Victory, we finally won. Wu Yaguo raised his arms and shouted in an impassioned tone. Cheers rang out, and people looked at him, as if victory was brought by him. We overthrew the rule of this hateful dictator with our own hands. We will use our own hands to create a better future. Yes, we can. He tried his best to use the words in his mind to paint a beautiful future for people. People looked at him as if they were looking at God. The hero also put down his axe and cast a respectful look at him. But before unfolding this beautiful picture, we will judge this sinner. As he said, Wu Yaguo looked at her. Everyone looked at her. Kill her. Use fire. No, her body should be displayed to the public. Listening quietly to the calls in his ears, Wu Yaguo looked down at Han Junhe, hoping to read fear in her eyes. However, he was disappointed, and he saw only calmness. A trace of anger flashed across his face, but it was quickly hidden behind a mask of pity. Quiet, everyone calm down first. He raised his hand and signaled the people to stay calm. Pointing at Han Junhe who was lying on the ground, he said loudly, I hate her so much. I want to kill her. I will not hesitate to vent my anger in the most cruel way. The bruise on his face made this sentence seem so convincing. The hero standing aside casually tore off a piece of rag from his sleeve and tied it to his bloody left arm, then weighed the fire axe in his hand and showed a grim smile to Han Junhe. He was only waiting for an order to chop off her head. However, Han Junhe never looked at him from beginning to end, just waiting for something calmly. But I forgave her. People looked at him in confusion. We are just, and we are revolting in the name of justice. We will punish her crimes, but all this should be done by law, not by our emotions. I forgive her, but the law will judge her crimes fairly. Han Junhe smiled as she listened to Wu Yaguo's highly infectious speech. Although the smile was so subtle under the bloodstains. This is a skill she cannot learn. Controlling people's hearts. No advanced technology is needed, just a mouth is enough. The bruise, on the contrary, became his mettle, showing his kindness and tolerance. People believed that under his leadership, they could lead Shelter 027 to a better tomorrow and put him on the throne. As for Han Junhe, he was deprived of the power of the director. Several armed thugs came forward and rudely pulled her up. He used her ep to cancel the order she set and actively transferred the director's authority to Wu Yaguo. Then Wu Yaguo handcuffed her and pushed her out of the door with scars all over her. People glared at her, some spitted at her, and some tried to throw garbage in her face. But they were stopped by the kind new director. She will be tried. Before that, we must let her live until the day of trial. Standing aside, Academician Qin watched all this silently. People did not embarrass this respected old man. They politely invited him back to his residence and asked him to bless the new regime. He did so, and then the people who were monitoring him withdrew. Like a historical stage play, a familiar scene was replayed in this dark underground. In the interrogation room, Han Junhe sat on the cold bench, staring at the ceiling in a daze. Half a day had passed since the coup. No one interrogated her, no one came to bandage her wounds, and no one even came to bring her food. In fact, it didn't matter. People can live for 2 or 3 days without food. As long as she had a breath left, it was enough. This was the greatest kindness, allowing her to spend the last few hours of her life in peace. At this moment, the door opened. Han Junhe raised her tired eyelids and thought to herself, is it finally here? However, she was disappointed. An acquaintance walked in. Feng Hui, a senior engineer of shelter technology, was responsible for managing the power facilities of the shelter. Feng Hui lowered his head, not daring to look directly into Han Junhe's eyes. It was me. I pulled the fuel rod out 1 centimeter. It can be said that he contributed at least half of the success of this uprising. Yeah. Sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? Han Junhe asked calmly. I just feel that, how should I put it, if there is a different director, maybe everyone's life will be good. Scratching his head and talking, Feng Hui organized the fragmented words in his mind. Is it just a feeling? Han Junhe ignored him and continued to be in a daze. Swallowing his saliva, Feng Hui took out a tube of nutrient solution from his pocket, hesitated and glanced back, then walked timidly in front of Han Junhe. Drink it. Is the trial over? Han Junhe asked. No. It's not worth it. Han Junhe did not take his nutrient solution and closed his eyes, sympathizing with the dictator who was about to be tried at the moment of the victory of the uprising. If you did not prepare a set of high-sounding rhetoric in advance like Wu Yago, you would probably be vented by the angry residents. However, Feng Hui's face showed a pleading look. Please, drink it. At least, it will make me feel better. He may sympathize with the people's uprising, but when he saw Han Junhe being beaten into such a miserable state by the irrational people, his heart was tortured by guilt all the time. I can't. Just when Feng Hui was about to persuade her, footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. He hurriedly put away the nutrient mixture in his hand. Almost at the same time, two people walked into the dark confinement room. It was the new director Wu Yago and Zulu, who was the ambassador. Feng Hui. What are you doing here? Wu Yago looked at Feng Hui next to Han Junhe and frowned slightly. Zulu looked at Han Junhe with a smile and said with satisfaction, yes, he's still alive. Of course, we act according to the law, not as barbaric as this woman. Wu Yago said proudly. Really? That's great. Zulu smiled. Wu Yago was delighted, and Feng Hui also breathed a sigh of relief. This undoubtedly revealed a friendly signal that the Fishbone base supported the new regime they established, which would be much more powerful for the subsequent negotiations. At least a good result was produced, which also made Feng Hui feel a little comforted. Only Han Junhe was indifferent. The moment she saw the woman, she knew that everything was over. Walking in front of Han Junhe, Zulu smiled and stretched out two fingers, pinched her chin, and gently turned her towards her. Han Junhe did not resist, but her eyes were as calm as dead water. Jiang Chen wants to see you. Hearing Zulu's words, Wu Yago couldn't help but remind her. But, she will be tried. This is the premise of maintaining friendship. Zulu stood up and looked at Wu Yago. She once threatened our leader and used the kindness of our leaders as a breeding ground for her dictatorship. She should be punished. Hearing that this was the premise of friendship, Wu Yago immediately wavered. The silence lasted for half a minute. Will you punish her? Of course. Zulu said with a smile. Wu Yago glanced at Feng Hui. You get out. Feng Hui secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and with a sense of guilt and relief for escaping a disaster, he quickly left this hellhole. Wu Yago used a movement that was almost the same as Feng Hui's when he entered the door and glanced back at the door of the confinement room. After confirming that no one was eavesdropping, he lowered his voice and spoke to Zulu. It's hard for me to explain this to the people. You will fight for 30 fuel rods per month for your people in the next negotiation. I believe these fuel rods are enough for you to live a rich life in the next year. You know, our leader hates her very much. If we can get the opportunity to deal with her personally, we don't care about this price. Zulu smiled and painted a big pie to Wu Yago. Hearing this, Wu Yago's eyes flashed with an undisguised ecstasy, but soon calmed down. Ahem, if it's 40, I believe the people will understand Mr. Jiang Chen's anger and make appropriate concessions in the law. After all, cheating is shameful. 35. This is the biggest concession. Zulu's eyes flashed with impatience. Of course, bargaining is still necessary. If you act too casually, he may become suspicious. 35 fuel rods per month, which is almost 3 times the benefits Han Junhe has fought for, is enough to show his wisdom. After hesitating for a moment, Wu Yago reluctantly nodded in agreement. Just like the pork placed on the chopping board and sold with a clearly marked price, is this the final outcome of a wise queen? Han Junhe watched the two people discuss quietly, with an expressionless expression on his face. Before leaving, Wu Yago gave him a last sarcastic look, and then left the confinement room. The look seemed to say, I'm sorry that I can't appreciate the painful expression on your face. However, Han Junhe's expression was very indifferent. You don't seem very scared? Zulu asked with a smile. When are we going? Han Junhe asked calmly. Zulu was stunned for a moment, and then her face regained the warm smile of the Madonna. It's good now. After that, she turned and walked towards the door. Chapter 312. This place has always been mine. It only takes an hour to drive from Fishbone Base to Camp 27. However, it is already the end of February, and the snow on the ground has almost melted. Thanks to this, the zombies and alien species on the street are also ready to move. Because of the two meat mountains on the road, the convoy was delayed for a while, and Jiang Chen took twice as long to reach the camp. Standing outside the several meter high concrete wall and looking at it, Jiang Chen was quite moved. I didn't expect that the camp had developed into this state in just 15 days after the construction started. Seeing the convoy of Fishbone Base, the soldier standing on the wall immediately opened the gate and let the vehicles pass. As soon as he passed the gate, Jiang Chen jumped out of the car and saw Zulu standing at the door waiting for a long time. I was delayed for a while on the road. Didn't wait too long. Jiang Chen smiled as he walked in front of her. No problem, it's my honor to wait for you. Zulu shook her head and said with a playful wink. Haha, don't be so polite, tell me the situation briefly. Okay, let's talk as we walk. Okay, boss. The two walked towards the center of the camp together. On the way, Zulu explained to him the dramatic changes that had taken place underground in the past few days. From the initial rally protest, to the control of the embassy, to the uprising. Speaking of which, boss, how did you guess that the residents of the shelter would cause chaos on their own? Walking beside Jiang Chen, Zulu looked at Jiang Chen with a smile, and her eyes flickered with admiration. It was undoubtedly a very enjoyable thing to be stared at by a beautiful woman with admiration. Even Jiang Chen knew that with Zulu's brain, it was impossible for her to not be able to think of such a small problem. Intuition. Hearing Jiang Chen's concise answer, Zulu was stunned for a moment, then raised her lips and smiled. You are so humorous. In the center of the camp was a cement house with only 2 floors built, which was regarded as the command post of the Fishbone Base's garrison in Camp number 27. Seeing Jiang Chen coming, the 2 sentries standing guard at the door immediately saluted and opened the door for him. As soon as the door was opened, a wave of hot air hit him in the face. It's quite warm inside, you don't need to wear so much, Zulu said with a smile, while taking off the winter clothes. After taking off the winter clothes and hanging them on the wall, Jiang Chen looked around along the wall and asked with a little surprise, what is this? This uniform and gentle heat does not look like a heater, but rather a bit like the temperature-controlled wall heater in his villa. However, it is strange that the supplies pulled from the base do not include troublesome wall heating facilities. Even in the Fishbone Base, only Jiang Chen's villa is equipped with such a luxurious thing, and ordinary survivors only use electric heaters. The electromagnetic nitrogen heating device was given to us by the residents of the shelter, to thank us for providing them with shelter. Walking to the side of metal sphere, Zulu introduced it to Jiang Chen with a smile. The nitrogen content in the air accounts for about 78%, and the nitrogen in the room is heated as a whole through a special electromagnetic effect to achieve a uniform heating effect. Looking at the spherical heating device, Jiang Chen walked up and touched it. It's hard to imagine that this thing that heats the whole house is actually warm. How much electricity does it consume? Jiang Chen asked. It consumes about 2/3 of the energy of a traditional electric heater. It seems that there are a lot of good things in the shelter. Jiang Chen nodded approvingly. Although winter is almost over, it is still a good idea to equip the Fishbone Base with a set. It will belong to you soon, right? Zulu winked playfully. This place has always belonged to me. Jiang Chen raised the corner of his mouth. Looking at the confident frivolity on Jiang Chen's face, Zulu smiled lightly. Putting away the frivolous look, Jiang Chen turned to look at Zulu seriously, cleared his throat and said, let's talk about business. Wu Yaguro should have asked to renegotiate with us, right? Yes. According to your request, I painted a pie for them. Zulu nodded. Have the embassy staff evacuated? Taking the opportunity to transfer Han Junhe, they have all returned to the surface. Zulu said. Hearing that Han Junhe had been sent to the surface, Jiang Chen smiled playfully. Very good, they have lost all their bargaining chips. Let them surrender. Negotiation? Negotiation can only happen under equal conditions. Yes, sir. With a charming smile on her lips, Zulu leaned forward and bowed slightly, and left. Happiness and joy filled every corner of the shelter. People celebrated their victory, drank synthetic wine, and feasted on molecular cuisine, just like a festival. The bloodstains on the wall had been washed away by detergent, and the bullet holes on the steel had been filled with restoring solvents. In the director's office, the long conference table had been filled with all kinds of molecular cuisine, and became a wine table for the residents' council to celebrate their victory. Cheers to our victory. Wu Yaguo stood up, toasted the council members, and then laughed, and drank the wine in his glass first. The technology in the shelter was very advanced. With sufficient energy, they could almost live in an environment that was no different from the good old days before the war. Just let those ugly and dirty scavengers pick up garbage for them on the surface, give them a little bit of the technology they dream of at the right time, and then admire the worshipful expressions on their faces and enjoy the fuel rods they offer with both hands. 35 fuel rods a month is enough for them to live like a holiday. Haha. Cheers. For freedom. For victory. As the wine glasses flowed, everyone's face was filled with drunkenness, as if they were in a dream that they would never wake up from. Speaking of which, where is that cousin? How can we miss that fellow at such a festive moment? Said a drunken councillor. Disband the residents' council and let these politicians who don't have to work on weekdays go to mop the floor. No one present had a good impression of her. Hiccup. Before we punish her, why don't we have some fun? Someone suggested with a burp. That's right. For example, let that old virgin dance a thong for us to liven up the atmosphere. Haha. TSK, I'm really curious about what kind of humiliating expression that bitch who has been riding on our heads and bullying us for 3 whole years will show. Listening to the dirty words exhaled by the councillors under the influence of drunkenness, Wu Yaguo's face was slightly embarrassed. It's not because he felt ashamed of these people's thoughts. He didn't mind abusing that woman to cheer them up. It's just that Han Junhe had been taken to the surface by Zulu. Ahem. Guys, that bitch has been sent to the surface as a gift of peace. After coughing lightly, Wu Yaguo decided that it would be better to explain it clearly, as soon as possible. The voice gradually stopped, and a pair of drunken pupils looked over. A drop of cold sweat ran across his forehead. Wu Yaguo sobered up instantly. His mind turned quickly, and he organized a speech that would not disappoint others. You know, because she threatened our partners, the man named Jiang Chen wanted to deal with her personally. Think about it, guys. The once arrogant queen may now be suppressed by a group of angry beggars. I think this is the best punishment for that bitch. The congressman thought about it, and it seemed to be the case. That's right. There is no more humiliating punishment than this. It just benefits those scavengers. Jiang Chen, who was sitting in the corner, burped and flicked his index finger. That's right, burp. Let's guess how. That bitch is being tortured now. Ha ha ha. Looking at the angry smiles, Wu Yaguo breathed a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, a militiaman ran in a panic, pounding on the office door, interrupting the banquet. Wu Yaguo glanced at him in dissatisfaction, holding a wine glass, and walked up to open the door. What's the matter? So hurried. Ground, surface. The man stammered, and couldn't say a word. Surface? Wu Yaguo raised his eyebrows, and repeated it as if to confirm. The man gritted his teeth, glanced at the congressman sitting in the room, leaned close to Wu Yaguo's ear, and whispered a few words. Bang, with a sound, the wine glass fell to the ground. Like a death knell that woke up the dream, the bright red wine flowed along the veins of the floor. Wu Yaguo's eyes widened, and his pupils shook in panic. How is it possible? Chapter 313. You have two choices. Upon learning that Jiang Chen would stay here for a few days, Wang Xiaowu, who was in charge of the camp's defense, immediately busied himself to prepare a comfortable office and bedroom for him, and said that, if Jiang Chen had any instructions, he must let him know. However, Jiang Chen did not cause any trouble to the staff in the camp, nor did he interfere with the normal operation of the camp. When he was free, he sat at his desk with a book in his arms and wrote something. Your meaning has been conveyed to the underground. Walking into the command post's office, looking at Jiang Chen sitting at his desk writing something, Zulu said with a smile. Stopping the pen in his hand, Jiang Chen stretched and stood up from his office chair. Wu Yaguo's answer? They refused and expressed shock at our choice. Jiang Chen's expression did not show the slightest surprise. As expected, their reaction was, whether it was their refusal or their shock. They locked the elevator and closed the door of the shelter at the same time, expressing the hope that you can calmly examine the friendship between the two sides. Zulu said with a smile. Hearing this, Jiang Chen sneered and shook his head. Too naive. Boss, what if they follow Han Jianhua's strategy? Zulu asked softly. Seal the door. Haha, impossible. Seeing the confident expression on Jiang Chen's face, Zulu's eyes showed a trace of confusion. With her intelligence, she could figure out Jiang Chen's strategy to incite the residents of the shelter to revolt, but she didn't understand why Jiang Chen was so confident that they couldn't seal the door. That trace of confusion naturally didn't escape Jiang Chen's eyes, but he just smiled and didn't explain too much. Speaking of which, what is the load capacity of the elevator leading to the underground? The design standard is said to be 20 tons. While answering, Zulu became even more confused, not knowing why Jiang Chen asked this. 20 tons. That's good. Starting today, at 12 noon every day, send someone to pour 2 tons of sand underground. Zulu was stunned for a moment, and then a smile of understanding appeared on her face. As you wish, boss. Any other instructions? Glancing at the unfinished bill on the table, Jiang Chen was also a little tired at this moment, so he thought for a moment and continued. Well, speaking of which, where is Han Jianhua imprisoned? In the basement of the camp. Zulu said softly. Jiang Chen had a playful smile on his face. I'm tired from work. Take me to see her. Han Jianhua's current condition must have disappointed Wu Yaguo and a group of residents. After being brought to the surface by Zulu, the whipping and insults she imagined did not come, and she did not even receive any excessive treatment. It was better to say that the people in the fishbone base were too friendly to her. She was surprised, but when she asked Zulu, she only got a mysterious smile. The medical staff healed the bruises and bloodstains on her face and reconnected several broken ribs for her. With 170 years of medical technology, it is easy to eliminate this level of damage, but what surprised her was that these survivors living on the ruins also mastered these technologies. Then, she was taken to the basement. There was a soft bed here, as well as a table and chairs. Although the wall was inlaid with thick chains, no one put them on her. Every time it was time to eat, a young female soldier would bring her hot meals. If she wanted to go to the bathroom, the same female soldier would come in and handcuff her, then point the electric shock device at her, and escort her to the bathroom. This confused her. Was he just going to lock her up here? Just like that, 2 days passed. The iron door of the basement was opened, and a man and a woman walked in. Seeing Jiang Chen's half-smiley face, Han Jianhua felt unexpectedly calm. Just like that day, when she stood under the Type 50 electromagnetic cannon, she faced Jiang Chen, pointed the pistol at her head, and counted the seconds in a voice without any emotion. Walking in front of the former shelter director, Jiang Chen casually pulled out a chair and sat down. Zulu stood beside him, smiling and paying attention to Han Jianhua's eyes without saying anything. What do you feel now? Looking at Han Jianhua with a calm face, Jiang Chen said with a smile. Her long black hair fell to her shoulders, and under her willow-shaped eyebrows were a pair of eyes as calm as lake water. There were a few bruises on her cheeks, but after taking medicine, I believe they will disappear soon. The military uniform has been replaced with an ordinary shelter jumpsuit, and the tight fabric outlines her beautiful curves. I heard that she was beaten badly in the shelter, but now she looks pretty good. Are you here to tease me? Of course not. But you don't seem to be afraid at all. Now you have nothing to threaten me. Jiang Chen smiled. Han Jianhua didn't say anything, just looked at him quietly, just like the first time they met. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Jiang Chen continued. How does it feel to be betrayed by the people you protect? Despair? Regret? Unbelievable. I'm sorry, none of them. Han Jianhua shook her head. How are you going to deal with me? None of them? Hearing this, Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows. How do you want me to deal with you? Intravenous injection. What's that? A more humane way to die. Of course, if it's too troublesome, a bullet will do. No, you may have misunderstood. Killing you would be a waste of God's resources, Jiang Chen said with a smile. Although he has some personality defects and is obviously not suitable for administrative positions, it is still a good idea to train him and get him a military position. At present, Fishbone Base has no shortage of talents in all aspects, but the only thing that is still blank is command talents. When fighting, it is basically artillery coverage and simple and crude infantry charge. This combat mode is naturally enough for small-scale battles, but with the development of Fishbone Base, we can't always expect that the opponents are all small shrimps. From the first time he saw Han Junhe, Jiang Chen had the idea of recruiting her as a pack army colonel. Although I don't know why he became the director of the shelter, it is unlikely that he is a fool in the division level combat command. My loyalty is only to pack. However, this girl was not so respectful, just said calmly, "But that thing is gone." "Do you really think so?" Han Junhe asked. Jiang Chen was stunned, thinking that she had not yet recognized the reality of the surface, so he curled his lips in disdain. "Pack? Go find it in light years away. Now you have two choices, join me, or," as he said that, Jiang Chen took out a pistol from his pocket, loaded it with a click, and then slapped it on the table in front of Han Junhe, looking directly into her eyes provocatively. Zulu looked at the pistol on the table with some concern, then looked at Han Junhe with an expressionless face, and gently pulled Jiang Chen's sleeve. "Boss." She was worried that Han Junhe would use this gun to do something bad to Jiang Chen. "It's okay, you can go out first." Jiang Chen waved his hand, indicating that she didn't need to worry. Although she was very worried, Jiang Chen's orders were absolute for any night. Zulu gave Han Junhe a warning look, and then left the door. Han Junhe glanced at the gun on the table, and then looked at Jiang Chen inquiringly. Jiang Chen's response was only 3 short words. "Life or death." Han Junhe was silent for a moment, and picked up the gun on the table. Jiang Chen watched her actions calmly. Then, she pointed the gun at her temple, just like when they first met that morning. "Why do you bother?" Jiang Chen said helplessly. "My mission has ended. It is my honor to die as a soldier." Are all pack officers paranoid? It's hard to understand. Jiang Chen looked at her, as if she were a monster. "You are not from that era. You won't understand." After saying that, she pulled the trigger. Shaking his head, Jiang Chen closed his eyes. The sound of the firing pin hammering came to his ears. Suddenly I realized that it is the end of the month. I really have no face to face all the elders and villagers who have not exploded once this month. But think about it from another perspective. I haven't taken a day off this month, right? I have been updating even during the Papa festival. So Chengxing is shamelessly asking for votes here. I hope that all the brothers who have monthly votes can support me, considering that I'm working hard to update despite the pressure of failing the exam. Please vote for me. Although there are only 4 days left, what if I make the list? Chapter 314 The End of the Mission. Ding, the sound of the firing pin echoed in the room, but the sound of the bullet being fired did not sound. There was no bullet in the magazine. Han Junhe's eyebrows jumped. After a while, she slowly opened her eyes and slapped the pistol on the table. "Are you teasing me?" "No." Jiang Chen sighed and put away the pistol on the table. He had thought of many things. If she picked up the pistol and tried to hijack him with the gun and force him to enter the shelter to save those who had abandoned her. If she really did this, it means that she still cares about the lives of those people in a pedantic way. In this way, if you want to force her to submit, you just need to threaten her with the lives of those people in turn. If she can't pull the trigger, it means that she doesn't want to die so meaninglessly. In this case, a slave chip is enough to control her. However, what Jiang Chen didn't expect was that she made the worst choice. For someone who is not afraid of death and has no worries, he really can't think of any idea to control her. Slave chip? It was just a more elegant and simpler way of coercion than pointing a gun at one's head. Although it can monitor the level of hormone activity and heart rate of the human body for lie detection, it cannot control a person's thoughts. I sincerely hope that you can join my cause. Jiang Chen tried to persuade him in the end. Cause? Do you call it a cause? The corner of his mouth raised a hint of disdain. This was the first expression that Han Junhua's expressionless face showed to Jiang Chen. I'm a soldier of Pac. I hope I will be one when I die. A flash of anger flashed across his face. Jiang Chen took a deep breath and calmed himself down. It seems that the negotiation failed. He smiled playfully and stood up. Han Junhua responded with a look of obviously so. Very good. Leaving only these 2 words, Jiang Chen stood up and walked out the door. Gone. Looking at Jiang Chen's departing back, Han Junhua secretly breathed a sigh of relief. However, to her surprise, the door opened again. The one who came in was Zulu, the woman whose smile was so pure that she felt uncomfortable. I don't understand why you refuse our leader. Zulu looked at her with a smile and said, are you willing to die for him? Han Junhua said lightly. Of course. Zulu's cheeks flushed like a sickly blush, but it soon disappeared and returned to her smiling appearance. Then you should understand me. The will of Pan-Asia cooperation is my life. Doctrine has risen to the height of belief, and there is actually no essential difference between it and religion. It's just that one believes in a specific god, and the other believes in a certain lofty concept. Zulu ignored her words and just smiled and said, you are really a lucky woman. Really? Of course, because the leader said that he would personally train you until you surrender. Han Junhua thought he had heard it wrong. Is this a lucky thing? It can only be said that there are all kinds of people, perverts, in this world. Han Junhua silently said in his heart. The smile on her face gradually cooled down. Zulu, who was wearing a white dress, looked down at her and said in a cold tone, from now on, your 3 meals a day will become 2 meals a day of nutrient mixture until you wake up. No problem. However, Han Junhua's response was only 2 words. Zulu looked at her playfully, and her eyes seemed to say, let's see how long you can hold on. Several female soldiers walked into the basement and moved the cotton wool on the bed and all other furniture. Enjoy your time in the small dark room. Leaving this sentence, Zulu turned and walked out of the door. It seems that it is unrealistic to expect everything to go as you wish. Han Junhua insisted to the end. However, the more she did this, the more interested Jiang Chen became. He didn't believe this. In one word, it is to say that she needs to be trained. As it happens, he has plenty of time to train her. Putting Han Junhua aside, the matter of Shelter 027 went quite smoothly. According to Jiang Chen's instructions, at noon every day, the soldiers of Fishbone would drive an excavator and slowly pour 2 tons of sand into the vertical well. The sand was poured very slowly, but it still smashed the steel elevator plate from a height of 1,000 meters. The explosion that lasted for about half an hour was like a spell, entangled in the hearts of every resident of the shelter, tormenting their psychological defenses. At this moment, there was no festive atmosphere in the shelter. Fear, suspicion, and bewilderment hung on the faces of every survivor. The ground was full of garbage, and the open space in the industrial zone was filled with the disgusting smell of alcohol. People gathered here, waiting for Wu Yaguo's explanation. What's going on? Wu Yaguo, you said. You have negotiated with them all. A resident standing in the front row pointed at his nose angrily and said angrily. It was only 3 days ago that he put him on the throne. This is not my fault. It's those barbarians who broke their promise. Facing the doubts of the people, Wu Yaguo said with cold sweat. He glimpsed a familiar color in the eyes of those people. This made him feel scared, and he didn't want to become the second Han Junhua. Calm down, everyone. If we panic, that will play into the hands of those people. Wu Yaguo swallowed his saliva and tried desperately to calm the emotions of the people. Calm down. How should we calm down? They want to bury us alive. Someone screamed. They shouldn't do this. They still need our technology, including the unfinished design of the Tiger II. They need us. They are just bluffing. A congressman tentatively proposed. The elevator only has to bear a load of 20 tons. If it exceeds this load limit, we can no longer go up. It's the sand that fell. If the sand is removed, the elevator can still be used. What's the use? Go up and surrender? Damn, these treacherous barbarians. Wu Yaguo swallowed his saliva, sweating profusely, and was about to say something. However, at this moment, Feng Hui walked up the stairs and spoke without authorization. Everyone. Although I know it's not my place to say this, but If the consumption rate continues at this rate, the shelter's energy will only be enough for 5 days. 5 days. Compared to the sand, it seems that they have more urgent things to worry about. Once the energy is exhausted, it will only take 10 minutes for this place to become a dead city. Wu Yaguo glared at Feng Hui angrily, and the latter shrank his neck in fear, but there was no regret on his face. Feng Hui knew that, if he raised this issue now and did something, the shelter might still be saved. Although his feeling has never been right. Energy shortages like a curse, lingering in the hearts of every resident. The revelry these days has almost consumed the little energy they have left. If it's Han Junhe. I don't know who said this half sentence. The man realized his slip of the tongue and quickly shut up halfway through his words. It is very dangerous to defend a person when everyone hates him. However, he obviously miscalculated, and his point of view was unexpectedly not refuted. Yes, if it was her. Maybe, pay attention to my wording. I just said maybe, we might have, done a little too much. It must be said, that the collective is forgetful. It was not until this time, that they remembered everything that person had done for them. Thinking about it carefully, everything she did seemed to be for them. As a dictator, she did not seem to use dictatorship to seek personal gain. Public opinion began to gradually turn to sympathy for Han Junhe. Listening to the whispers, Wu Yaguo knew that he could not hesitate any longer. If he hesitated any longer, he would become the sinner of the entire shelter. How to make the people have confidence. How to get rid of his own responsibilities in a high-sounding manner. He made an unexpected, but extremely stupid move. Everyone, listen to me, listen to me. Now, we are facing the most severe test since the establishment of Shelter 027. Hearing his shout, people stopped talking again, looked at him, and waited for his next words. I admit that my vision is short-sighted, my knowledge is vulgar, and I feel deeply sorry for my ability. Wu Yaguo lowered his eyebrows and bowed deeply to all the residents. There were whispers, but Wu Yaguo ignored them. He raised his head, raised his arms, and shouted. But I believe that the wisdom of the masses is great and their horizons are broad. Facing those pairs of suspicious eyes, Wu Yaguo opened his app and typed a few lines of code. Everyone's app vibrated and then looked at the message on the screen in surprise. Now, I dedicate all the power of the shelter director to all the residents of the shelter. Ladies and gentlemen, technology has made absolute democracy possible. Anyone can initiate a proposal, and anyone can cast their own holy vote for the proposal. The absolutely fair shelter terminal will recognize all of this. History will remember this moment, and we have made history. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you. After saying that, Wu Yaguo fled down the stairs in disgrace. The decision-making power has been distributed to everyone. The shelter no longer needs a director, and everyone is a director. At the moment of escaping down the stairs, he found out with his peripheral vision that the doubts in those pairs of pupils had been replaced by the excitement of power liberation. Soon, the first proposal was released, which was about whether energy use should be restrained. Academician Qin stood in the corner of the open space and sighed silently. This sigh had also sounded a few days ago. Unfortunately, no one listened. At the same time, the last clean particle wave shot to a few light years away, carrying a blood-stained experimental report. So far, the mission of Shelter 027 has come to an end. Chapter 315 Taking over the shelter. Jiang Chen didn't know what interesting topics the residents of the shelter who were immersed in their dreams had raised, but he knew what the last topic was. On the 5th day, the door of the shelter opened. They chose to surrender, and the proposal was passed unanimously. After the proposal was passed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, because many of them had not eaten for 24 hours. The elevator that was locked underground was released again, and the sand and a shivering resident of the shelter were lifted to the surface. Under the guidance of the soldiers of the Fishbone base, he met Jiang Chen and nervously stated his willingness to surrender. Jiang Chen gladly accepted their surrender, and the man was obviously relieved. He was Wu Yaguo. Under the supervision of 100 Fishbone soldiers, more than 1,500 residents in the underground re-initiated a proposal to transfer the authority of the director to Jiang Chen. Under the supervision of gunpoint, just like the day they forced Han Junhua to hand over the authority of the director. Everyone voted in favor of humiliation. It was passed unanimously, and Jiang Chen was elected as the new director of the shelter. In this way, the gate of the shelter was useless to the fishbone base. The authority to open the door was all in the hands of Jiang Chen. Then, more than 1,500 residents were forcibly taken to the surface and lived in crowded temporary dormitories, waiting for Jiang Chen's decision. After calming down, they were like trembling hamsters. Although they stood up in indignation and rose up in rebellion when facing Han Junhua, they could not muster the courage to resist when facing the unreasonable and heavily armed Jiang Chen. It must be said that human nature is such a wonderful thing. However, Jiang Chen did not embarrass them and quickly made arrangements for their future. In the entire 027 shelter, including the group of residents who moved to the surface first, 900 of the more than 1,700 people were high-tech talents in various industries, and about 400 of the remaining more than 800 people were under the age of 12. And more than 400 were useless people who knew nothing. The 400 useless people were taken to the Shengxiang town colony, where they will do manual labor, plant camu resin and process mutant fruits needed for nutrient mixture. As for the remaining 1,300 people, they are divided into families, some of whom live in Camp 27 on the surface, and some of whom return to Shelter 027 to enjoy a happy life. It must be said that even with many disadvantages, the shelter is still the happiest place in the entire wasteland. Only 200 places are allowed to return to the shelter, and this number changes with the changes in the scientific research projects offered by the fishbone base to the shelter. The 200 researchers will be assigned to 5 scientific research projects. They will continue to enjoy a comfortable life, and are allowed to bring a spouse and a child under the age of 18 to enjoy such a life with them. Of course, if there are many talents in the shelter, if their scientific research efficiency is too low, they will be kicked out of the shelter. Naturally, someone will be happy to replace them and live a paradise-like life with their family. As for the families who were forced to stay on the surface, Jiang Chen did not make things difficult for them, but raised them as a talent reserve. For example, for those who were good at virtual reality technology, Jiang Chen directly moved them and their families to the fishbone base and let Du Yankang lead them to develop virtual reality online games. Speaking of which, Du Yankang was also quite pitiful. Since he developed Future Man 1.0, that guy was forgotten by Jiang Chen. Many people who entered the fishbone base at the same time as him have been entrusted with important tasks, but he is still nestled beside a few machines to write code, and when he has nothing to do, he just spends his days. Now that he has brothers and sisters, he finally has a place to be brave again. Although he was as confused as when he developed Future Man 1.0, he didn't understand what the point of developing such an outdated head-mounted virtual infiltration game was. This confusion is roughly similar to seeing some people insist on playing Subway when they have smartphones. But he didn't ask much. Standing at the gate of the camp, Jiang Chen watched trucks leave the camp. 5 hours ago, these 8 trucks brought a total of 120 tons of cement. This C-grade cement was produced by the cement plant in Shengxiang town and will be used to build new homes for the residents of the shelter. Now, these trucks have taken away 421 residents of the shelter who were identified as not having scientific research capabilities in the ability assessment test. They will be registered as slaves in the fishbone base and will work in the plantation to support their families and strive to be promoted to lower class citizens as soon as possible. At some point, Zulu had already stood beside Jiang Chen and sighed softly. It's hard to imagine that the 027 shelter, which was once like a bone that couldn't be chewed, actually collapsed in this way. This is normal. Jiang Chen grinned as he looked at the shadow that was gradually receding at the end of the road. You are always so wise. Zulu smiled and looked at Jiang Chen's back. Jiang Chen was stunned. He didn't expect that someone would describe him as wise, and then he laughed. It's not a question of whether I'm wise or not, it's just that I do have some social experience. Zulu smiled slightly and did not continue on this topic. What should we do with the members of the resident council? I've arranged for them to get on the bus, including Wu Yaguo and Jiang Chen. The fishbone base needs talents from all walks of life, but this does not include politicians who can only talk and bureaucrats who can only make decisions. Perhaps a few months or even a year of physical labor will allow them to adapt and integrate into the new life in the wasteland. Hearing that Jiang Chen had made arrangements, Zulu nodded with a smile and then talked about her own stay or departure. The matter here is over. Do you need me to report back to the base logistics department immediately? The shelter has been completely captured, so the embassy naturally has no need to exist. No, we need management talents here. Wang Xiaowu is good at managing the army, but his management of the army will definitely go wrong when used to manage people. You performed very well in this incident, and the affairs of Camp 27 will be handed over to you. Okay, boss. Zulu bowed slightly. Wang King will summarize the scientific research projects and hand them over to you. Your main job is to supervise the research and development. In short, the things here are handed over to you. Do a good job. Jiang Chen patted her shoulder as encouragement, then turned around and prepared to leave. By the way, there is one more thing. Zulu seemed to remember something and suddenly called Jiang Chen. Huh? Jiang Chen looked at her with an inquiring look. There is an old man who wants to meet you. He claims to be an academician of the Pan-Asian Academy of Social Sciences, and his name is Kinzu Hei. Chapter 316. Light years away. A group of tents of different sizes were set up on the outskirts of the camp. Although they were simple, they were enough to shelter from the wind and rain. These tents were pulled from the fishbone base. Before the apartment building of camp number 27 was built, the residents who were forced to move to the surface could only live here temporarily. The rows of simple tents formed a sharp contrast with the 100 iron houses in the middle of the camp, just like slums and rich areas. It's funny to say that they had previously laughed at the immigrants who entered the surface in 2 batches, saying that they would not live a comfortable life and had to go to the surface to suffer. But now the situation seems to be reversed. Those people they once laughed at have now become the people they envy. After passing through several simple tents, Jiang Chen walked to a tent in the corner of the camp. He saw a white-haired old man sitting at the door, as if he was waiting for him. Are you Academician Qin? Looking at Jiang Chen standing in front of him, the old man smiled kindly and stood up. Yes, I guess you are the Jiang Chen? Jiang Chen nodded. You don't seem to be in good health. The old man waved his hand and said something that surprised Jiang Chen. It's okay, I'm a cyborg. Cyborg? Will cyborgs also age? Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes slightly, but soon returned to normal. I heard that you have something important to ask me. Is it for this? Of course not. Academician Qin shook his head. It's just that there is something I want to give you. As he said that, he took out a black bowl the size of a baseball from his pocket. Looking at the thing, Jiang Chen frowned. He always felt that he had seen this thing somewhere. Suddenly, his pupils contracted. Golden apple. Jiang Chen said softly. Academician Qin was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said, is that what you call this thing? But I'm afraid I'll disappoint you. This is just a communicator, a communication device, based on the special properties of Crane particles made by Dr. Crane, and is used as a mobile phone for interstellar communication. Of course, the energy of this thing has been exhausted, and it can only provide you with a coordinate. Jiang Chen took the black ball and looked at it carefully in his hand. It looks similar to the one he picked up from the U-235 submarine, but this one is obviously lighter. Moreover, this thing must be the real golden apple, not the copycat version of the golden apple made by the Third Reich. However, this thing is not used for disorderly broadcasting to other timelines, but for cross-distance communication. Can this thing talk to the past? Hearing Jiang Chen's question, Academician Qin smiled. Theoretically, it can, but just like Scrudina's cat, even if you shout a sentence to the past, you can't verify whether anyone hears it, let alone whether the person who hears it can understand it. Is that so? I heard that this thing uses brain extracts. Jiang Chen muttered to himself thoughtfully. That's a rumor. Academician Qin smiled. Indeed, the activity of clean particles can be observed in brain extracts, but how can it be possible to use the human brain to do this? In a parallel world, someone really did this. Jiang Chen silently complained in his heart. After a pause, Academician Qin, slightly serious, looked at Jiang Chen and continued. To be honest, this thing has lost its function. The reason I gave it to you is just to explain a fact to you. What fact? Jiang Chen asked casually, observing the metal ball in his hand. This is an experiment. Jiang Chen stopped what he was doing and looked at Academician Qin. Experiment? Yes, the experimental topic is to study what kind of regular evolution of human social structure will undergo under the condition of extreme resource scarcity. Academician Qin calmly stated the astonishing fact. Jiang Chen's expression was a little surprised or unbelievable, but he soon realized that something was wrong. It was just a coincidence. Is the PAC government so stupid? This is a civil air defense project, and it was built during a period of extremely deteriorating international situation. It shouldn't be difficult to put more spare nuclear fusion batteries. It was set for 50 years, but it was forced to start in 20 years. And that Han Junhe, obviously not the material to be a politician. However, he never thought that the entire shelter was just a laboratory and everyone in the shelter was a guinea pig. In fact, the energy was not enough from the beginning. Even the kind-hearted Zhang Kaiming was chosen as the first director of the shelter, and the cold Han Junhe was chosen as the second director of the shelter. They are not suitable candidates for the director, but they can be used as typical personalities for research. The experimental results will be sent to the Zhenghe colony ship several light years away through this device. The experiment discusses the typical, eliminates interference items, and discusses the outstanding parts of the sample. However, such an experiment on humans is really too cruel. Although it is just a small shelter, don't you think it is a microcosm of society? Why are you telling me this? Jiang Chen asked with a smile, after putting the metal ball in his pocket. He is not a member of PAC, and has nothing to do with the disbanded World United Organization. He is not idle enough to worry about people several light years away. I just want to give you an idea. If you are lucky enough to face that choice, I believe you will definitely understand something. Idea? That choice? Thoughts? Jiang Chen asked puzzledly. Yes, I have lived in the shelter as a researcher for 20 years. In addition to the topic I'm responsible for, I have been thinking about another problem. What problem? You should have heard of reproductive isolation. This is not a profound concept. Even in the biology textbooks of the 21st century, it is mentioned. Jiang Chen just recalled it briefly and nodded. Due to factors such as geographical isolation, different groups of the same organisms reproduce in different habitats. Because they cannot exchange genes, they are subjected to natural selection in different environments, which eventually leads to the formation of two completely different species. Looking at Jiang Chen, Academician Qin nodded approvingly. Although there are still some flaws in the theory, it is generally true. Under the condition of geographical isolation, after tens of thousands of years of evolution, the same species will also evolve into two completely different species. Geographical isolation is the premise of reproductive isolation, so I wonder if you have considered a possibility. If due to some factors, geographical isolation occurs between people, what kind of result will it produce? Reproductive isolation? Jiang Chen was stunned. No, it's ideological isolation. Academician Qin shook his head and threw out a concept that Jiang Chen had never heard of. Have you noticed that after only 20 years, people living underground and those living on the surface have been separated into two types of people? What if it's 50 years later? Or even longer? Jiang Chen's face showed a thoughtful expression, waiting for him to explain. Under different environments, civilizations change their own carriers and environments. In sociology, this is called civilization evolution. It's like ancient people and modern people don't have reproductive isolation, but there is an insurmountable gap in their thoughts. Casting our eyes to the deep space several light years away, do those colony ships flying in space also have some kind of gap with us? From the moment the colony ships accelerated to the third cosmic speed and escaped outside the solar system, they were no longer Earthlings. In other words, they, who gathered the elites of the entire human civilization, have evolved into some kind of higher existence. So what? No matter what they evolved into, they are no longer on Earth. Jiang Chen said indifferently. Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Academician Qin just smiled. What did European colonists bring to the Americas in the 16th century? Killing? No, it was civilization. Is there any difference? Jiang Chen was about to ask this question, but he was suddenly stunned. Yes, precisely because there is no difference. The birth of civilization will inevitably be accompanied by bloody barbarism. Academician Qin said softly. You mean, will they come back? Whether they come back or not, they will definitely do something. And for us natives, this process will inevitably be accompanied by pain, bloodshed, sacrifice. However, what is really chilling is that these actions may be justified in their eyes. Chapter 317, Supreme, Harmonious, Pure, Supremacy, Harmony, and Purity. Supremacy is the fusion of man and machine. This is easy to understand. Cyborgs can probably be classified as a manifestation of the supreme concept. Harmony is the combination of man and nature. It is roughly equivalent to transforming humans through genetic engineering to adapt to the harsh environment. For specific performance, you can refer to mutants. These guys who can feast on alien meat are definitely the most comfortable people in this wasteland, although no one agrees that they are human. As for purity, purity means not changing anything. Not changing anything? Is this considered evolution? Jiang Chen asked in confusion. It is. Academician Qin nodded. The scope of civilization's activities has expanded from the Earth to space. Not making any changes to its own form of existence is a huge change. Not giving up everything as a human being, and using external objects to strengthen and protect, the sacrifice required, is no less than the previous two. The only thing we can guess now is that the new humans who choose this path are most likely to be kind to us, at least more friendly than those who choose supremacy or harmony. After listening to Academician Qin's words, Jiang Chen fell silent. After a long while, he sighed. No matter what, these are too far away. It is indeed very far away. The formation of a new civilization may take decades, hundreds of years, or even thousands of years. But no matter how long it takes, civilization will eventually have to make a choice about the form of its existence. As an old man who is about to enter the coffin, all I can do is tell you what I think. If you can understand something and make the right choice, it will be the honor of the entire civilization. The honor of the entire civilization? It is really a big hat. Unfortunately, Jiang Chen has no interest in becoming a savior, nor does he have the ideological awareness. But if you think about it carefully, if he really lets him vote for the development direction of the entire civilization, he is more inclined to vote for the pure route. To ask why, it is naturally, because except for the pure route, will the other two routes still be human at the end? Under a bold guess, the end of the pure route is probably the fusion of humans and alien species, and the end of the highest route is probably to become a high-level artificial intelligence, and live in a hard drive. No matter which one it is, the fun of being a human is definitely abandoned. After leaving Academician Qin's tent, Jiang Chen threw the genuine golden apple into the storage space, and walked towards the entrance of the camp. There was an assault infantry vehicle parked at the entrance of the camp. Judging from the cigarette butts on the ground, the vehicle had obviously been waiting for a long time. Seeing Jiang Chen coming, the driver who was leaning against the door of the car smoking to kill time quickly threw away the cigarette butt, stood up and saluted him. Nodding to the driver, Jiang Chen sat directly in the co-pilot's seat. Drive. Go directly back to the base. Yes. Jiang Chen didn't say anything along the way. Seeing that the leader seemed to be thinking about something, the driver was also very tactful and didn't try to get close to him. He drove quietly with his hand on the steering wheel. It must be said that time passes the fastest when you are daydreaming. Just as he was distracted, the car had already driven to the entrance of the villa at the base. Back home, Jiang Chen hung his winter clothes on the wall and happened to meet Sun Jiao, who was going downstairs. Are you okay? Sun Jiao asked with some concern, looking at Jiang Chen's face. HMM. Jiang Chen looked at Sun Jiao in confusion and touched his face. Is there anything on my face? Seeing Jiang Chen's actions, Sun Jiao covered her mouth and laughed. Yes, there are 2 bugs on my forehead, all squeezed together. Bugs? Jiang Chen touched his forehead, but he touched his 2 pairs of eyebrows. Looking at the narrow expression on Sun Jiao's face, he immediately realized that this girl was teasing him. You guy, you actually tease your husband. Jiang Chen pounced on her in a feign anger, but was dodged by Sun Jiao with a smirk. In terms of physical ability, Jiang Chen really couldn't catch up with Sun Jiao without cheating. But Sun Jiao obviously didn't use her strength. After playing around for a few times, she was thrown down on the sofa by Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen panted and looked at Sun Jiao, who was finally pinned down by him, and smiled. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, her full breasts were rising and falling, and her misty eyes were staring straight into Jiang Chen's. Jiang Chen, who was about to do something bad to bully her, couldn't help but stop what he was doing. "What's wrong, baby?" Jiang Chen said softly, using his fingers to gently lift the messy hair on her forehead. He could feel the hesitation. What was she thinking about? The queen-like face rarely showed a trace of weakness. Looking at Jiang Chen hesitantly, Sun Jiao said in a low voice, "Or, why don't you go back over there and rest for a while?" Jiang Chen couldn't help but feel a little surprised when he heard what Sun Jiao said. Sun Jiao had always wanted him to stay here and not go back, but this time she actually took the initiative to bring up this matter. Seeing the surprise on Jiang Chen's face, Sun Jiao's cheeks flushed slightly, and then she continued. "Didn't you say this place is too depressing compared to your place? I'm afraid." She bit her lip, but soon she loosened her white teeth again. "Anyway, this lady won't allow you to hate this place." Although the voice was 9 points of willfulness, Jiang Chen could still clearly feel the deep love from it. "Well, I swear." Looking directly into Sun Jiao's eyes, Jiang Chen promised seriously. After staring at Jiang Chen for a long time, Sun Jiao suddenly laughed out loud. "What are you laughing at?" Jiang Chen pretended to be angry and slapped that asterisk. Sun Jiao cried out slightly in pain and rolled her eyes at Jiang Chen. "Nothing. Is it okay to think my husband is cute? You should think your husband is awesome." Jiang Chen smiled evilly, and his hands began to become restless. Feeling the coldness lingering on her waist, Sun Jiao's cheeks flushed. She rolled her eyes at Jiang Chen and complained. "In the living room again. It seems that we have never succeeded in the living room." This time it was Jiang Chen's turn to be embarrassed. He recalled the first time when Sun Jiao jumped on him like an untamed little wildcat. Just as he was about to do something, he was seen by Yao, who happened to be coming downstairs. "Ahem, how about we go back to the room to continue?" Jiang Chen subconsciously glanced at the empty stairs and awkwardly withdrew his hand. Rolling her eyes at Jiang Chen charmingly, Sun Jiao nimbly got out of Jiang Chen's arms and sat firmly on the sofa. With a queen-like air, she stretched out her jade fingers and gently lifted Jiang Chen's chin. "Come to my room tonight." The red lips playfully exhaled a hint of warm fragrance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318, Transfer of Military Factory. The next morning, Jiang Chen walked out of Sun Jiao's bedroom with dark circles under his eyes and yawning. Recalling the beauty of last night, a smile appeared on his face. Perhaps because it had been too long since they had sex, Sun Jiao was particularly obsessed with him last night. She didn't let him go until the early morning and fell asleep like a well-fed kitten. Thinking of this, Jiang Chen couldn't help but stretch his waist comfortably. The comfortable expression instantly solidified on his face, and a drop of cold sweat slid across his forehead. "Damn. My waist. It hurts." At this moment, Yao, who was rubbing her sleepy eyes, happened to pass by the corridor. Seeing Jiang Chen standing motionless at the stairs, she couldn't help but tilt her head in confusion. Ahem. Yao, come and help me." Jiang Chen almost shamelessly squeezed out this sentence for a long time. This feeling of shame was simply sour and refreshing. Fortunately, the kind-hearted Yao quickly stepped forward to help him. Looking at those ignorant eyes, Jiang Chen really didn't know how to explain why he had sprained his waist. It was already the beginning of March, and Wanghei City basically couldn't see any snowfall. As the situation in the wasteland gradually stabilized, things in the real world gradually became clear, and it was almost time to go back. Of course, before returning to the real world, Jiang Chen still had some important things to deal with. After having breakfast in the cafeteria of the community center, Jiang Chen took a helicopter directly to the 6th block. After getting off the plane, he went straight to the headquarters of the Jiao group in the inner circle. After several months of renovation, there were no traces of civil war in the entire inner circle, including the building of the Jiao group. The hole that was almost penetrated by the electromagnetic gun had been filled up, and it was impossible to tell from the outside that a fierce battle had broken out here. As soon as he stepped into the building of the Jiao group, Jiang Chen felt countless eyes focused on his face, and then hurriedly fled. Jiang Chen smiled and didn't care, and walked straight to the elevator. The young security guard standing at the entrance of the hall glanced at Jiang Chen from behind, and saw that he walked towards the elevator without notifying the front desk, so he was ready to step forward to stop him. The old security guard on the side saw this, and quickly grabbed the collar of the new colleague. The young security guard tilted his neck, and looked at the old security guard in surprise, and saw that the elevator door had been closed, and couldn't help but complain angrily. "What are you doing? Didn't the boss say that anyone who didn't report to the front desk should be stopped and thrown out? Bullshit. Don't you look at who that person is? Do you believe that if you stop him, your boss will put your head in the toilet?" The old security guard spit flew all over his face, and the young security guard was stunned. Who is this person, so arrogant? Seeing that the new colleague was so stupid, the old security guard couldn't help but sigh. "Hey, you just came here from Hangzhou, so you may not know much. The 6th block is no longer the 6th block. Have you seen the newly built casino in the inner circle? A nuclear bomb was exploded there a few months ago." Nuclear bomb? The young security guard widened his eyes. Tactical nuclear bomb. The equivalent is not large, but at least it wiped out half of the city. Could it be that man? No, but things have changed here after all. The entire 10-man committee was basically defeated in that civil war. And that man was the only winner in that civil war, the marshal of the 6th block. The old security guard sighed, and said with a little melancholy, "It is impossible not to miss the era of the 10-man committee. At that time, I don't know how many people envied his identity as a security guard of the Jiao group." The young security guard's eyes were almost popping out. 2 drops of cold sweat slid down his forehead, and he couldn't help but feel a little scared. Fortunately, the old guy helped him, otherwise it would be a small matter to lose his job, and it would be a problem to offend a big shot whether he could walk out of this door. Others need to make an appointment to see Jiao Chen Wu, but Jiang Chen is naturally not that troublesome. When Jiang Chen walked into his office, he saw that the former hero had been sitting at his desk waiting for a long time. "What a rare guest. What brings you here?" Seeing Jiang Chen come in, Jiao Chen Wu stopped his work, smiled and stood up and said. Jiang Chen noticed that his face looked good, and he didn't look depressed at all when he handed over the power. "How have you been recently?" "Haha, everything is fine, thanks to Boss Jiang. Come on, let's sit next to each other. The food business is getting bigger and bigger. Although he lost some power, he has gained a lot in other places." Under Jiang Chen's instruction, he set up a trade team. Not only did he expand his food business as far as Lhasa, he even opened up the sales of tea and coffee. The green and colorful subcrystals are pouring in like a tide. In less than a month, he has made up for nearly 30% of the losses he suffered in the Civil War. While chatting, the two walked to the reception room next to the office and sat at a tea table. After a while, his female secretary Sulei came in, silently made 2 cups of hot tea for the two, and then retreated to the door. Jiang Chen noticed that her right hand had been replaced with a mechanical prosthesis, which was probably due to the Civil War. After a brief greeting, Jiang Chen went straight to the point and asked about the completion of the order for the 10 T3 power armors. "It is now March, and it is almost time for delivery. It's done. I went to the military factory to inspect it yesterday, and the technicians have completed the final program debugging. Do you need me to take you to see it now?" Jiang Chen waved his hand. "No hurry, I will send someone to pick up the goods tomorrow, and the remaining 88,000 subcrystals will be deducted from the income from food trade. By the way, what is the current production capacity of your military factory?" Hearing Jiang Chen asking about the production capacity of the military factory, Jiao Chen Wu thought for a moment, and then gave a conservative answer. "With the newly added production line, the production capacity has increased by about 60%. 60%? Then let me ask it another way. How many power armors can be produced in a month? At most 3. Too few. Jiang Chen shook his head. Seeing that Jiang Chen was somewhat dissatisfied with his work, Zhao Chenwu couldn't help but reveal a helpless expression on his face. In fact, it's already a lot. Power armor is not a bullet. It can't be produced on an assembly line. Basically, 10 mechanical engineering technicians are around a skeleton, holding the blueprints, and tinkering with it for more than half a month to make a set. And these are skilled workers. Why can't we use an assembly line? Were all the power armors before the war made one by one? Hearing Jiang Chen's question, Zhao Chenwu couldn't help but smile bitterly. How can it be so easy? There are thousands of large and small parts. Without a complete industrial system, there is no way to put such a big guy on an assembly line. Power armor is still good, like the spider tank. It's considered fast to be able to produce one in half a year. After a pause, Zhao Chenwu continued. And to be honest, there are more and more factories now, and materials such as steel, copper, and aluminum are not cheap. Military trade is not as profitable as food business. Hearing Zhao Chenwu say this, Jiang Chen finally understood. It turned out that the key reason was that this guy himself had no interest in developing a military factory. The profit brought by the food business is more than 1 million, and the cost of a set of power armor is more than 9,000 subcrystals. If it is sold at a price of 11,000, it will only make 2,000. After working hard for a whole winter, he only made 20,000, which is not as much as a convoy to the next city. In the past, the military factory was developed to arm his private soldiers. Now Jiang Chen has restricted their private armed forces and even put the glory chip on them. In this way, he naturally lost the motivation to develop a military factory. However, this military factory is his own after all. If others don't want to do it, Jiang Chen can't force it, so he said, after thinking for a while, then let's do this. You sell the military factory to me, including the workers, and you give me a price. Seeing that Jiang Chen was willing to buy the military factory that didn't make much profit, Zhao Chenwu was naturally overjoyed and said with a big hand, no problem. The total cost of the military factories related to power armor and spider tanks is 870,000 subcrystals, which is the cost price. Chapter 319 Procurement of Arms. In the end, Jiang Chen pushed the transfer price of the military factory down to 600,000 subcrystals. 870,000? Do you think your military factory is stable and profitable? Power armor is something that ordinary people can't afford, and the sales market is very narrow. What's more, with the establishment of the 6th block bank, the wealth brought by the last 2 expeditions has completely ignited the industrial fire of the 6th block. Small workshops and even military factories have sprung up like mushrooms after rain. Giving up the lucrative food business to expand the military factory is simply a waste of money. Zhao Chenwu argued with Jiang Chen for a while and then happily accepted the price. He was quite satisfied with being able to sell 600,000 subcrystals. With these 600,000 subcrystals as operating funds, he will further expand the scale of the caravan and do business in more distant places. But Jiang Chen is different. Compared with subcrystals, he, the marshal of the military government, needs to consider military issues more. By the way, how is the research and development of the T4 power armor going? Speaking of research and development, Zhao Chenwu's expression was slightly embarrassed. Some technical problems have not been solved yet. The main problem is the engine. The 2 mercenary groups I commissioned have not made any progress in recovering the relevant technology. Then transfer the R&D team to me as well. Jiang Chen said directly. It just so happened that the 027 shelter had just been incorporated. For the problems that Zhao Chenwu could not solve, perhaps it would not be a problem at all for the shelter scientists who inherited a large amount of pre-war technology. Zhao Chenwu nodded. Okay, then the research team was originally part of the military factory. But to be honest, research and development is a bottomless pit. Except for the brittle armor, the T3 power armor is superior in mobility and firepower, and there is not much room for improvement. It's not just a little brittle, it's too brittle. Jiang Chen shook his head. Except for the chest armor. The armor on other parts will be broken after a few scratches by the death claws. Hearing this, Zhao Chenwu smiled bitterly and said, you can't compare this with the death claws. Defense is not the strong point of airborne power armor. Even land-based power armor will have some trouble if it is stuck to the body by the death claws. Land-based power armor? By the way, is there a military factory in Block 6 that produces land-based power armor? Zhao Chenwu shook his head. No, or there's no need. No need? Jiang Chen asked with a little surprise. Compared to the bulky land-based power armor, the highly maneuverable and short-distance airborne type is obviously more suitable for exploring the wasteland. For example, if surrounded by a group of zombies, the airborne type can at least fly out with the vortex engine on its back, while the land-based type can only be squeezed to death there. Zhao Chenwu patiently explained to Jiang Chen. The claws and teeth of the zombies can't break the steel of the power armor, but with tens of thousands of them, it's no problem to squeeze the power armor flat. So that's it. It's still a question of practicality. The tea on the table has gone cold. Looking at Jiang Chen's thoughtful expression, Zhao Chenwu picked up the teacup and took a sip, motioning Su Lei to pour hot tea. Don't bother, it's getting late. Jiang Chen glanced at the electronic watch on the wall and stood up with a smile. Zhao Chenwu also stood up and asked with a smile, are you ready to go? I'll take you down. Oh, by the way, there's something else. I still need a batch of arms. Do you know any arms dealers who can introduce me? It would be best if they have ready-made goods. Zhao Chenwu was stunned. What type of arms? Anti-armor weapons, thermal grenades, and sniper rifles, etc. In short, the larger the quantity, the better. Haha, then you have finally found the right person. Zhao Chenwu was overjoyed. It just so happened that an old friend from Sioux City came to me these 2 days and asked me if I was interested in taking over a batch of arms. But I don't do that business anymore, and he is worried about how to deal with this batch of goods. If you are interested, I will help you contact him now. What are you waiting for? Jiang Chen smiled. Just take me to him directly. I want to solve this matter as soon as possible. Zhao Chenwu gave Su Lei a few instructions and asked her to contact the merchant from Sioux City. Then he went downstairs with Jiang Chen and drove straight to the industrial area of the 6th block. Not long after, the car stopped in front of a warehouse. A middle-aged man with wrinkles on his face stood at the door of the warehouse. Judging from the cigarette that was not even half burned, he should have just arrived. After seeing Zhao Chenwu's car, his eyes lit up. He put out the cigarette and put it back in his pocket, clapped his hands, and walked towards the two people who had just got off the car. Hey, Boss Zhao, I heard that you are interested in my goods. The wrinkles on his face squeezed together, and the man grinned, revealing his yellow front teeth. It's not me who is interested, it's this big shot. Zhao Chenwu looked at Jiang Chen and introduced him casually, the Marshal of the 6th District Military Government, Jiang Chen. It's Marshal Jiang, nice to meet you. The man showed obvious surprise on his face and quickly took the initiative to extend his hand to shake hands with Jiang Chen while introducing himself. I'm Hu Yao, a merchant from Sioux City, and I have heard of Boss Jiang for a long time. Fooling? It's really a good name. Do you know me? Jiang Chen asked with a little surprise after letting go of his hand. Hey, Boss Jiang, you're joking. How many merchants who often come to this area don't know you? Hu Yao touched his dirty nose and smiled. Since you know you, I think you should know who can't be fooled. Zhao Chenwu looked at Hu Yao with a smile. Of course, I wouldn't dare to fool Boss Jiang, even if I had 100 guts. But I guess with Boss Jiang's reputation, he shouldn't do things like selling on credit, right? Hu Yao rolled his cloudy eyes and said tentatively. Now that the 6th block is no longer ruled by the 10-man committee, dealing with a dictator makes these powerless merchants somewhat worried. If Jiang Chen swallows his goods without paying, then he really has no place to argue. Hearing this, Jiang Chen laughed twice and waved his hand. Don't worry, I will never do such a thing as taking things without paying. Just take me to see the goods. After getting Jiang Chen's promise, Hu Yao immediately laughed happily and bowed exaggeratedly. Thank you, Marshal Jiang. I will take you to see the goods now. With that, Hu Yao turned around and walked towards the warehouse first. Do you need me to accompany you to see the goods? Zhao Chenwu looked at Jiang Chen and asked. No, I'll just go and have a look myself. Okay, I'll go back first. By the way, this guy is very cunning. Don't let him cheat you. When you bargain as hard as you can. He has been here for almost half a month, and he has to sell it, even if he loses money. Hearing Zhao Chenwu's words, Jiang Chen showed a puzzled expression. Is it difficult to sell munitions here? Hearing this, Zhao Chenwu shook his head. The market is already saturated. There are only so many people. And with the continuous emergence of factories and small workshops, I'm afraid this saturation will become the norm. Not to mention the merchants from Sioux City, even the local military factories in the 6th block, have to start worrying about sales. 3 months ago, this was simply unimaginable. At that time, everyone had more than enough subcrystals in their hands, and the improvement in living standards also rekindled the desire of the survivors to hunt subcrystals. As a result, those mercenary groups and lone travelers who were eager to replace their equipment even lined up in front of the military factory. Arms dealers who have no worries about sales naturally racked their brains to add production lines and expand production. But everyone only has 2 hands after all, and weapons and equipment are not so easy to damage. When this big change trend is over, those overproduced weapons will naturally be piled up in warehouses and cannot be sold. Overproduction is indeed a problem. If it is not properly handled, I'm afraid that after a short period of prosperity, those emerging factories and small workshops will fall into the dilemma of bankruptcy. It is not just the arms industry. As the production capacity of the 6th block gradually increases, other industries will sooner or later face similar problems. Looking at the ragged back, Jiang Chen couldn't help but reveal a thoughtful expression on his face. Chapter 320, The Big Mine and Slaves. The iron door opened, and a smell of desiccant hit us. Hu Yao fumbled and pressed the button on the wall, turning on the light in the warehouse. The dark space lit up instantly, and thick wooden boxes almost filled the warehouse. Those open boxes were stuffed with baseball-shaped heat-sensing grenades, and bowl-sized rockets arranged like honeycombs. Against the wall opposite the door was a row of ghost sniper rifles, roughly estimated to be more than 100, and the boxes next to them should be filled with replaceable sights. As for the cylinder against the wall on the other side, it was obvious that it was used to launch those rockets. Ghost sniper rifles, heat-sensing grenades, poison python anti-tank rocket launchers, rippers, and some reliable gadgets. I believe you will be interested, Hu Yao said with a smile, and made a gesture to Jiang Chen to invite him in. Walking forward, Jiang Chen picked up a poison python and put it on his shoulder to try out the sights. Is this thing useful? It only takes 1 shot to destroy a power armor, Hu Yao added, and it's a land-based model. Is the quality reliable? I guarantee it with my life. Hu Yao patted his chest and promised. Nodding with satisfaction, Jiang Chen put down the rocket launcher in his hand, and then picked and chose in the warehouse to confirm the quality of other weapons. Excuse me, is Boss Jiang planning to do something big? Oh, how do you know? Jiang Chen said casually, while gesturing with the ghost sniper rifle in his hand. The pair of shrewd little eyes turned around, and Hu Yao grinned. Hey, now everyone knows that the arms in the 6th block are no longer selling. Boss Jiang is in the food business, and I think he doesn't care about this small profit. This batch of arms is to arm an army? Jiang Chen glanced at him, and Hu Yao was so scared that he quickly waved his hand to explain. Ahem, don't get me wrong, I don't mean to pry at all. What do you mean? Jiang Chen looked at him with a smile. Hey, I just want to ask Boss Jiang if he is interested in people. Hu Yao smiled flatteringly. People. To put it simply, they are slaves, but they are well trained and have electronic collars around their necks. When fighting, they just need to rush forward. Jiang Chen looked at Hu Yao in surprise. I didn't expect that in addition to doing arms business, you also trade in slaves. Hearing that Jiang Chen seemed to be interested, Hu Yao immediately became interested and explained to Jiang Chen diligently. Slaves are a specialty in Sioux City. For example, the big mine in Sioux City has more than 70,000 or 80,000 slaves registered for sale. although I don't have any. If Boss Jiang needs them, I will go back and get a batch for you right away. Jiang Chen couldn't help but be moved. 70,000 or 80,000? What the hell is this big mine? 70,000 or 80,000? Including the survivors and floating population attached to the surrounding area, the population of the 6th block is only a little over 50,000. There are as many as 70,000 or 80,000 slaves registered for sale. This is too perverted. Hearing that Jiang Chen had never heard of the big mine, Hu Yao was a little confused, but thinking that it might be because Jiang Chen had never left Wanhei City, he did not make too many guesses and explained to him the origin of the big mine. First of all, the reason why it is called the big mine is not because it is really a mine, but because there is a subcrystal mine with an output value of more than 100,000 points. Jiang Chen had heard Sun Jiao mention subcrystal mines a long time ago, but he had never seen them. According to Hu Yao's description, it is a kind of biological mineral deposit attached to the rock wall, in the shape of meat bubbles, and the growth form is similar to moss. Although it looks disgusting, subcrystals can grow from the meat bubbles. The slaves of the big mine have to wear chemical protective suits and walk into the mine every day to pick up sand-sized subcrystals from those disgusting and highly corrosive meat bubbles. Because they were guarding a big gold mine, the mine owner of the big mine also hired a group of looters who were good at catching slaves and gathered a mob of 4,000 people, becoming the most powerful survivor force in Sioux City. Because of the special relationship with the surrounding looters, in addition to exporting subcrystals, the big mine also engaged in slave trading. The necrotic parts of those subcrystal meat bubbles can be cut off and used as excellent materials for making nutritional mixtures, so the cost of raising slaves is not high, and the number of slaves naturally increases. Jiang Chen thought for a moment and asked, "How many slaves can you bring?" "It depends on what kind Boss Jiang wants," Hu Yao said with a grin. "It's still the end of winter, and the road is not too dangerous. I can bring you 1 or 2,000 of the cheapest slaves, but they are just cannon fodder and are of no use at all. And for those with good physical fitness, I can also bring you 100 or 80. The more expensive ones are good stuff, because they are in short supply, and I can only give you a definite answer after I go back." "Good stuff? What are the good stuff?" Jiang Chen asked with interest. "For example, some powerful lone travelers, and some special talents with outstanding abilities in certain aspects. Of course, the most expensive thing is the ice coffin." Hu Yao smiled mysteriously. That smile looked so obscene. What the hell is an ice coffin? That's a good thing. Boss Jiang should have heard of the hibernation chamber. "I've heard of it." Jiang Chen nodded. Cryogenic hibernation technology allows people to spend a long time without their body functions being able to function properly. For the user, 50 years may be just a blink of an eye. Some shelters are even made up of a large number of hibernation chambers. Yao, for example, woke up from a similar shelter. Imagine holding down those celebrities, noble ladies, and rich girls who were above 10,000 people before the war, watching them crying and shouting for the police, and begging for mercy, while telling them that the world is hopeless, and then watching their sad faces gradually become desperate. Alright. Jiang Chen quickly raised his hand to interrupt his Taichang speech. He described it so vividly, it would be a waste of talent for this guy not to write a little H-book. Seeing that Jiang Chen seemed dissatisfied, Hu Yao quickly shut up. After a pause, Jiang Chen thought for a moment and then said, "How much do healthy slaves sell for?" 20 subcrystals each. "Well, I need 1,000. Can you do it?" Hearing that Jiang Chen was going to buy so many at once, Hu Yao was naturally overjoyed and quickly agreed. "Yes, of course I can do it. Leave it to me." The slave trade was extremely profitable. He could earn 10 subcrystals for a slave worth 20 subcrystals, which was many times more than the profit from arms. He did not bargain for this batch of arms, and directly sold it to Jiang Chen at the cost price of 80,000 subcrystals. After finally getting rid of this burden, he couldn't wait to rush back to Sioux City and transport the slaves before the aliens ended their hibernation, which would undoubtedly save a lot of costs. March is the golden period for trade, and it only happens once a year. But before he left, he mysteriously handed Jiang Chen a small wooden box, saying it was a small gift from a merchant who had come from afar to the marshal. When Jiang Chen asked what it was, he just smiled and said in a low voice, "Do you know the secret of training female slaves in the big mine?" Chapter 321 Slavery Chip Modified Version. It was already the third day, and the woman named Zulu did not do anything to her. If there was any difference between these 3 days and the previous days, it was probably that the 3 meals a day were replaced with 2 tubes of nutritional mixture a day. No one would let her go to the toilet if she wanted to, and they would just put a beaker under the door. In fact, as long as she endured the unspeakable shame, there would be no other inconvenience. For the pampered residents of the shelter, the nutritional mixture might be an unbearable pig food, but for Han Junhe, a soldier, the nutritional mixture was just a convenient military ration. Not to mention that she drank this stuff every day in the shelter. She had only eaten cooked food a few times since the outbreak of the war. Did Jiang Chen think that a few bottles of nutritional mixture would make her surrender? It was too naive. As for loneliness, she had been accustomed to loneliness for a long time. Looking at the dark wall, Han Junhe emptied her mind as usual. She had been passing time like this these days, and time passed very quickly in this state. I just don't know why that face occasionally popped up in her mind. It's not normal to have such a feeling towards the enemy, but she still can't help being curious about him. She wondered how the man who had used human weakness to capture Shelter 027 would make her surrender. Of course, she thought it was impossible. Just then, the door opened, and a beam of light was projected into the small dark room. Squinting at the light source, she saw Zulu. Today's nutrient mixture. What day is today? Han Junhe asked casually, after taking a test tube from Zulu. Why do you ask that? Zulu didn't answer, but just looked at her with a smile and asked back. You actually came to give me this thing in person. Zulu didn't say anything, just looked at her with a smile. Do you want to see me drink it? Seeing no response, Han Junhe didn't say anything. Silently unscrewing the lid, she drank the sticky liquid expressionlessly. In the corner of her eyes, the smile on Zulu's face seemed to be getting more and more obvious. For some reason, her smile made Han Junhe feel a little uncomfortable. Although she couldn't tell exactly what she felt uncomfortable about. At this moment, she suddenly felt dizzy and her vision gradually became blurred. Was it the anesthetic? Thinking silently, her consciousness fell into the abyss. The number of words for VIP editing must be less than before, so I can only do this. Please forgive me. If you want to blame someone, blame the beast. Woo woo. I beg for forgiveness. The deleted parts will be posted on Weibo account. Morningstar LLLL. Note that there are 4 L's as extra content. If you don't read it, it will not affect the plot. It's just that the protagonist uses high technology to do some bad things within the legal framework. There is no law in the end times. Harmony, 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 harmony. Harmony, 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 harmony and 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 harmony, 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 harmony. Harmony, 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 harmony and 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 harmony. The harmony of harmony and harmony is harmonious. 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 Harmony, 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 harmony. Harmony, 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 harmony and 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 harmony, the best of both worlds, the best of both worlds. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Kidian.com to vote for recommendations and monthly tickets. Your support is my greatest motivation. Mobile users, please go to read chapter 320 to Camp Explosion. Pulling up his pants, Jiang Chen glanced at Han Junhe, who was lying on the ground, and a wicked smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Although he didn't take away the first time in front, but the back. Anyway, at this moment, Han Junhe sat on the ground with his eyes blank, his face full of daze. The training has just begun, don't be unable to withstand it. Hearing Jiang Chen's words, Han Junhe's body twitched obviously, and a helpless fear seemed to be reflected on his cold face. The iron door was closed heavily. The lights gradually dimmed until they disappeared, leaving the pack female major with only the boundless darkness and the afterglow of the peak. Seeing Jiang Chen walk out of the iron door, Zulu, who was waiting at the stairs, immediately came up to him. Is it over? Well, maybe it was a little too much. It was not until afterwards that Jiang Chen realized his evilness. Zulu was a woman after all, and her cheeks couldn't help but blush when she heard Jiang Chen say this, but she recovered quickly. Maintain the status quo. Maintain the status quo. I will come here from time to time to persuade her. With a smile, Zulu nodded. Okay. However, at this moment, there was a loud bang outside the headquarters. The window glass was shaken and made a buzzing sound like a cicada's wings, which scared Zulu so much that she squatted on the ground with her hands on her head. The flames shot up to the sky, and Camp 27 was in chaos. The survivors rushed to the elevator, and the soldiers quickly ran towards the tent area where the explosion occurred. Hearing the explosion, Jiang Chen immediately rushed out of the headquarters, but happened to meet Wang Xiaowu, who was in charge of the camp's defense. Marshal, Wang Xiaowu broke out in a cold sweat when he ran into Jiang Chen. He was in charge of the defense of Camp 27, but now such a mess happened under Jiang Chen's nose, which frightened him so much that he broke out in a cold sweat. Don't say anything, hurry to the explosion site and find out what happened. Jiang Chen knew that now was not the time to pursue responsibility, and finding out the truth of the explosion was the top priority. Yes. Gritting his teeth, Wang Xiaowu shouted at the top of his voice and rushed to the explosion area with his rifle. The ground was blackened by the explosion, and the high temperature even melted the cement bricks on the pavement of the square. Fortunately, the explosion occurred in the corner of the camp. Although the boiling flames were amazing, it did not cause large-scale casualties. The soldiers opened a cordon around the explosion area. 2 engineers wearing chemical protective suits ran in together, quickly checked the explosion area, and after confirming that there were no radioactive materials or residual explosives, they called on others to come forward. Marshal, this kind of thing can be left to us little people to deal with. It has just been bombed here, and it is not safe. Seeing that Jiang Chen wanted to come forward, Wang Xiaowu hurriedly persuaded him. Our engineers have already swept the area, and there should be no explosives left. It's good to have an extra ride this time, so as not to miss any details. Jiang Chen gently pushed away Wang Xiaowu's hand and walked towards the ruined camp. Seeing that Jiang Chen refused to listen to his advice, Wang Xiaowu was anxious and in a dilemma. In the end, he had to slap his thigh and followed him. The tent at the center of the explosion had been completely blown into slag. Kicking away the pile of burnt rags with his feet, Jiang Chen saw a broken face. It was Academician Qin. Walking to Jiang Chen's side, Wang Xiaowu glanced at Academician Qin on the ground and couldn't help saying, "Poor old man." Looking at the old face, Jiang Chen pondered for a moment, then squatted beside him. Wang Xiaowu watched Jiang Chen push away the stones and take out a fist-sized mechanical heart from his chest. He couldn't help but widen his eyes. "Cyborg?" "Yes, cyborg." Jiang Chen didn't say anything, but just stuffed the mechanical heart into Wang Xiaowu's hand. "Investigate the cause of the explosion. I'll wait in the office." After saying that, Jiang Chen left the explosion site in silence. His intuition told him that this was a murder, and the target was Academician Qin Zuhei. But why? Confirm to kill. Silently, Lin Xiaowen put away the remote control in his hand and walked in the opposite direction of Camp 27. Any experimenter in the shelter must die. It is the will of his father to clean up these experimenters. If it is very close, he will do it himself. If it is too far, he will hire predators or mercenaries. The result is the same. That is, the experimenter must die. As for why, he doesn't know. As an intermediate artificial intelligence, he has the ability to think, but he doesn't understand this behavior. How to say it? It doesn't seem like logic, but rather like a belief. It is ridiculous to let machines think from the perspective of humans, just as it is ridiculous to let humans think from the perspective of stones. After crossing a street, he suddenly stopped. A pair of eyes as big as copper bells were fixed on him. 10 sharp claws were moving around, and the swaying tail seemed to tell that it was ready to move. There was no death claw nest in this area. If there was a death claw, there was only one reason. It was coming for him. Death claw? If you want to kill me, you have to at least send a mother of death claw. Lin Xiaowen took out the lightsaber expressionlessly and danced to sword flowers. What he didn't know was that the mother of Deathclaw had been killed by Jiang Chen. Roar. The deafening roar swept away a layer of airwaves, and the Deathclaw rushed towards him violently. At the same time, Lin Xiaowen moved. A stream of data flashed in his pupils. The motion vectors of every part of the Deathclaw's body were captured by his electronic eyes, and then summarized to the central processor, and the response judgment was completed within 0.0001 seconds. He put away the sword and squatted down, and the strong wind from the claws swept over his head. The lightsaber shone brightly, and with a whimper of pain from the beast, Lin Xiaowen blinded the Deathclaw's eyes with a sword, then lowered his body and dodged behind it. With its eyes severely injured, the Deathclaw stumbled into a nearby shop. It waved its claws and tail wildly, and cement blocks flew everywhere. Lin Chaoen put away the lightsaber, took out the particle vibration cutting dagger from his waist, and walked leisurely towards the blind Deathclaw. He kicked the Deathclaw's right leg with his foot, and then stepped to the other side of the Deathclaw. The Deathclaw suddenly turned around and chopped the place where Lin Chaoen was standing, scraping the cement on the road into pieces, but exposing its entire back in front of him. The dagger was raised above his head and lightly stabbed into its fragile spine. Raw, the Deathclaw made a last abrupt whimper, and its back straightened, as if it had been electrocuted. Without stopping, Lin Chaoen swung the dagger downwards, splitting its spine in half like cutting tofu. Blood, flesh and internal organs were scattered all over the ground, and the Deathclaw fell to the ground with a bang. He pulled out the dagger, and the blood stain on the blade gradually disappeared. The high-frequency vibration turned the dark blood into fine mist-like dust, and the light path of the Tyndall effect bloomed in the sun. It was like the evolutionary road paved with blood. No progress at all? Lin Chaoen muttered to himself, and put away the dagger. He walked around the body of the Deathclaw, and stepped out of the half-destroyed shop with one foot. However, at this moment, his steps froze. At some point, the shop was surrounded by zombies. Those pairs of empty eyes locked on him, swaying their languid steps, and the zombies slowly walked towards him. Winning by numbers? It's really troublesome. Lin Chaoen muttered to himself, and the lightsaber appeared again. Generally speaking, zombies would not attack him as a machine, but these zombies were obviously not ordinary things. Attracted by some force, the zombies suddenly howled and rushed forward. The lightsaber drew several arcs, but was soon submerged in the sea of corpses. Chapter 323 A Murder? The explosion in the tent area caused panic in the camp. Many people clamored to return to the shelter, and there was even a sign of colliding with the soldiers on duty. Fortunately, Wang Xiaowu was decisive and quickly rushed to the elevator entrance with the soldiers in the camp to provide support. He used machine guns to fire into the air, to forcibly suppress the momentum of seizing the elevator, and control the situation with tough means. As the acting director, Zulu was also not idle. With her affinity and good image in the hearts of the residents of the shelter, she gradually stabilized the emotions of the residents. At the same time, the investigation into the cause of the explosion was also in full swing. Soon, a report of the investigation results was placed on Jiang Chen's desk. 21 people were injured, 5 people died, and 17 tents were damaged. The center of the explosion was very close to Academician Qin's tent, only about 2 or 3 meters away. In a farther place, the soldiers found the fragments of a drone. Based on these clues, it can be inferred that someone should have flown a drone carrying a bomb to Academician Qin's tent, and then detonated the bomb remotely. This is obviously a murder, and the murderer is from outside the camp. But why? Jiang Chen closed his eyes tightly, and leaned back in his office chair, thinking. He really couldn't understand why an old man who was about to die was worthy of others' jealousy, especially an old man who had just left the shelter. Suddenly, he had an idea, and took out the black metal ball that Academician Qin gave him from the storage space. Is it because of this? Directly using a bomb, it is obviously not to steal this thing. Someone wants to destroy the communication coordinates connected to the Zhenghe. Of course, this is just one possibility. Another possibility is that considering Academician Qin's identity, someone may want to get rid of the experimenter in Shelter 027. Jiang Chen frowned slightly. At this time, there was a light knock on the door of the office. Throwing the golden apple into the storage space, Jiang Chen casually said, "Come in." Pushing open the door, Zulu walked in. The residents' emotions have stabilized. New tents and daily necessities have been distributed to the residents who suffered losses. As for the residents, who were more seriously injured, they have been temporarily transported to the shelter for treatment. Very good, you handled it well. Jiang Chen nodded to affirm her work. Zulu smiled modestly, and stood there waiting for Jiang Chen's further instructions. Where is Wang Xiaowu now? He is leading the patrol himself. Do you need me to find him? Jiang Chen shook his head. No. Tell him for me not to be too nervous. I won't blame him for this. After all, no one would have thought of using a drone to sneak into the camp and then detonate a bomb. But I hope the same thing won't happen again. Okay. Zulu nodded. turned around and left the office, gently closing the door. Leaning back in the chair again, Jiang Chen looked up at the ceiling and closed his eyes, sorting out the chaotic clues in his mind. To be honest, if it were just a few insignificant residents of the shelter who died, it would not be enough for him to be troubled by it. What really made Jiang Chen feel uneasy was the feeling of being kept in the dark. Someone had killed someone in his territory and used such an unpredictable method, but he had no idea about the murderer's motive for the murder. There were two possibilities. One was to destroy the golden apple, and the other was to kill Academician Qin. Wait. Jiang Chen suddenly opened his eyes and realized that he seemed to have entered a misunderstanding. No matter who the murderer was, he must know one thing clearly, that is, the shelter had been opened, and Academician Qin had moved from the shelter to the surface. It was not difficult to know this. Camp 27 was just built not long ago, and it was not as well protected as the Fishbone base. It only took a drone suspended in the air to get a clear view of the situation in the camp. As for who was plotting against Shelter 027 from the beginning, and seemed to know that it would be opened soon, guarding near it, the answer was already obvious. Lin Chaoan and the people from the Crimson Chamber of Commerce. Considering the mission record obtained from the EP, Jiang Chen can preliminarily speculate that the Crimson Chamber of Commerce should only be regarded as an accomplice, working for Lin Chaoan for the formula of good times. In this case, it was Lin Chaoan who carried out the explosion. But what was the motive? At this moment, a word flashed through his mind. Evolution. Jiang Chen still remembered what Academician Qin had said to him about the three evolutionary directions of civilization and the inevitability of the new human exporting the civilization form to the old human. Jiang Chen didn't take his words seriously at first, but he didn't expect such a thing to happen now. Could there be some connection between these two things? Robots, electronic people, represent the supreme? Jiang Chen muttered to himself. At this time, the indicator light on the corner of the table suddenly flashed. Seeing a call coming in, Jiang Chen reached out and tapped the corner of the table. A holographic image was projected in front of him, reflecting Chen Weiguo's head. Boss, the location you specified to explore has been scouted. After seeing Jiang Chen, Chen Weiguo reported in a deep voice. Oh, did you find anything? I found a gathering point for a group of survivors, but it may not be. This is an image taken from a high altitude, Chen Weiguo said, and passed a video frame to Jiang Chen. It was a video shot from more than 1,000 meters above the ground, and the aerial photography was completed by the Yangtze 51. The target location is an office building. Because it is close to the city center, the building is greatly affected by the high temperature generated by the shock wave of the nuclear explosion. From the charred appearance, it is impossible to see what is there. However, judging from the sentry machine guns displayed on the top of the building, this should not be an uninhabited place. Then, the helicopter descended. The pilot probably wanted to get closer to observe whether there were any traces of survivors, but was soon driven away and fired by the anti-aircraft machine guns hidden in the bunker. The picture shook violently, and then the helicopter began to retreat. Because they did not receive the attack instruction, the gunner did not use the Type 50 electromagnetic gun to fight back. Is there anyone there? Jiang Chen frowned and asked. It's not clear yet. Chen Weiguo's expression was helpless. Any survivor gathering point with a little ability will be equipped with life signal shielding equipment, and there is no trace of human activity from the outside. But since there are so many sentry machine guns guarding there, it should not be uninhabited. Send a few drones to keep an eye on it, and report to me immediately if there is any situation. Also, send more people to Camp 27. If there is nothing else, you can go and get busy first. Yes. Chen Weiguo saluted and ended the communication. After turning off the screen, Jiang Chen leaned back in his chair and sighed. Damn, why are there so many trivial matters? Suddenly cursing, Jiang Chen jumped off the chair and left the office. The next morning, Jiang Chen found Wang Xiaowu and told him to take drone protection measures, such as setting up drone detection radars in the camp and installing M-traps. After giving these instructions, Jiang Chen went straight back to the Fishbone base. It was already close to mid-March. If nothing unexpected happened, things in the real world should be getting better. It had been more than a month since he left, so it would be better to solve the problems in the Panu Islands as soon as possible. The development in the real world had temporarily reached a bottleneck. Only by obtaining a reliable base could he unscrupulously develop black technology. After telling Sun Jiao that he was going to be away for a few days, Jiang Chen took the batch of arms that had just been transported from the 6th block and then traveled back to the real world. Chapter 324, Gunshots in Koro City. For the Panu Islands, which are close to the equator, there is no obvious difference between winter and summer. The sea breeze from the South Pacific, carrying the unique fishy and salty smell of the sea, swayed the green palm leaves and the lonely smoke of war. No one had ever thought that this small and independent country would be overshadowed by war. No one remembered which side fired the first shot. The Civil Liberties Party quickly armed a 500-man anti-government army with funds from unknown forces and conventional weapons purchased from American arms dealers. They originally planned to launch an uprising at the end of March. The troops were divided into two groups, one to attack Johnny's villa and the other to capture the presidential palace in order to end President Edward's corrupt rule and support the new regime to come to power. However, it turned out that they were too naive. The uprising was not smooth from the beginning. Although the Civil Liberties Party relied on generous aid funds and the people's extreme disappointment with the Panu authorities, it gathered a like-minded team in a short period of time. However, due to the large number of people and the chaotic management within the organization, the Panu authorities seemed to have received the news in advance. Almost at the same time as the uprising broke out, the military camp responded quickly. The riots first took place in Koro, the capital of the Panu Islands. The anti-government soldiers wearing masks printed with the new state-owned enterprise and wearing urban camouflage, holding M401, fought fiercely with the government troops in the suburbs, who were almost the same in uniform. Then they were beaten back by the government troops. Such a result was completely beyond the expectations of the top leaders of the Civil Liberties Party. They originally thought that when the gunshots rang out, those government troops would turn against them and join their camp and surrender to the banner of justice. However, they obviously miscalculated. The government army fired a burst of bullets at them, and the chess players carrying the new national flag immediately splattered blood on the streets. Then the armored vehicles rushed into the streets, and the .50 caliber heavy machine guns fired at the insurgents, and cement blocks and broken limbs flew everywhere. Although the government army had only 100 people, they were all professional soldiers. Even though they used the same American equipment, the combat quality of both sides was completely different. Moreover, in addition to light weapons, the government army also had armored vehicles and tanks. It was simply a massacre. The symbol of the new national flag not only did not bring courage to the rebels, but instead became a mark for the government army to distinguish between enemies and friends. The strategy of frontal attack was wrong from the beginning. Although the proposition of the Civil Liberties Party has penetrated into the hearts of every Panu people, they still overestimate their influence and combat effectiveness. In modern warfare, the number of people is not the decisive factor for victory. The blood flowed from the door of the presidential palace to the north coast of Koro Island. The rebels who attacked the presidential palace were beaten back step by step. The smart ones tore off the masks with the new national flag on their faces and pretended to flee as civilians. However, those who reacted slowly were directly crushed out of the suburbs by firepower and forced to jump into the sea on the cliff at the northern end of Koro Island. The scarlet blood more or less calmed down those passionate young people. Although ideals are important, life is equally precious. Facing an unbeatable opponent, they really can't muster the mood to fight back. As for the battlefield on the other side, the group that attacked Johnny's villa also suffered a heavy blow. Sparks flashed, and metal shells peeled off. A white man wearing a bulletproof vest leaned against the wall, maintaining a professional squatting posture, holding a Scar assault rifle in his hand and accurately clearing the mob across the street. Headshot, the fifth one. With a grin on his mouth, Aubrey adjusted the muzzle of the gun and continued to pull the trigger. Now it's the sixth one. You lose. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The black guy leaning against another window cursed, feeling sorry for the $200 he lost. The combat effectiveness of those mobs carrying M-series rifles is not much different from that of monkeys holding fire sticks. They have never received military training, and they can't even use the bunkers around them to cover the crossfire. What's the situation outside? Johnny walked behind the two and glanced out the window cautiously. He once thought he was very brave. Once, for half a pound of marijuana, he even took out a pistol and fought with another gang in the streets of Los Angeles. However, this kind of bravery seemed to be useless on the battlefield. Looking at the flying cement chips, it was the first time that he felt so scared. Aubrey spit out the cigarette, but in his mouth and grinned. Don't worry, boss. Even if there are 100 of them, they can only be targets. As he was speaking, the heavy machine gun on the roof spewed out fire snakes, nailing a dozen insurgents who tried to crawl into the villa from the side to the ground. Like this. Aubrey raised his thumb, pointed to another window on the side, and said to Johnny in a relaxed tone, "They are mercenaries from Australia. They served in the Australian Special Forces before retiring. Now they are paid a high salary of $5,000 a month to protect the safety of this American tycoon." Relieved, Johnny continued to sit back on the sofa, but soon stood up again. On the table was a bottle of Australian yellow kangaroo wine. Although the bottle cap had been opened, he was restless and had not drunk a drop of wine. "Boss, maybe you need to relax." The black guy holding the rifle smiled and comforted him, showing his white teeth. It was too easy for them to deal with this group of rioters. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Of course I know. Sitting back on the sofa, Johnny grabbed the glass, reached out to grab the bottle, and poured himself a glass. However, because of the trembling of his arm, the scarlet liquid was poured on his hand. What a waste. The black guy reluctantly moved his eyes away from the bottle and put his attention back on the sight of the assault rifle. "Don't interrupt. Keep your eyes on your position." "Okay, boss." These mercenaries did not understand why the boss was so panicked. These rioters had no deterrent power at all. Although they launched a charge towards the villa with great momentum at the beginning, they were soon suppressed by the heavy machine guns on the roof. After a while, I'm afraid the government army will come to support. After all, Johnny is a star entrepreneur in the Panu Islands. The money Edward took from him is at least tens of millions of US dollars. However, only Johnny himself knows that this money is not his, but given by a man named Roberts. Originally, he did not feel that it was inappropriate at all. He took bundles of US dollars and did business, bribed, and did whatever he wanted under Roberts' instructions. As Johnny International's business grew bigger and bigger, the economy of the entire Panu Islands was almost monopolized by him. At this point, Roberts' instructions were somewhat audible and ignorable to him. At least he thought so. To put it bluntly, there was no loan relationship between them. Now Johnny International can operate normally and smoothly even without Roberts' funding. And when the development zone contracted by Linhua Group is completed, it can be foreseen that the tourism industry in the Panu Islands will soar exponentially, and his Johnny International will also make a lot of money. However, it was not until a phone call 2 days ago that he woke up from his dream. In 2 days, the Civil Liberties Party will launch an uprising. Roberts told him on the phone that day, "This is impossible. They are just a group of underground parties with no money and no power." Johnny remembered that he refuted without hesitation. "Really? I'm just reminding you. It's up to you whether you listen or not." After saying this, Roberts hung up the phone. At first Johnny didn't take it seriously, but later he felt a little uneasy, so he talked to Edward and said that he heard from an employee that the Civil Liberties Party was plotting an uprising. Unexpectedly, the uprising actually happened. The fighting power of these mobs was so weak that his bodyguards blocked them outside the wall without any casualties. As for the bullet holes on the walls of the villa, it was only a matter of a few $1,000s, and his loss was just that. But what frightened Johnny was not this, but that all of this was under the control of the man named Roberts. How did he know that there would be a riot? Wasn't that guy in Los Angeles? Damn it. Confusion and panic were entangled in his mind. He ignored the bright red wine on his pants and raised his head to take a sip. The bloody wine slid down the corner of his mouth, along his neck, and over his collar. With a sudden wave of his hand, he threw the glass against the wall. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Johnny stood up from the leather sofa, walked towards the stairs, and walked down the stairs with a slouch. "What's wrong with the boss?" The black guy glanced at the stairs and cursed in a low voice. Battlefield anxiety? I remember that new recruits will have some when they go to the battlefield for the first time. The bodyguard who had not said anything whispered. Aubrey did not speak. His sight was still locked on 500 meters away, and the crotches of the holographic sight were locked behind a thug who staggered away. The man had already thrown away his weapon, but Aubrey had no intention of letting him go. The 13th. Aubrey said with a grin as he buckled the plate. Walking down the stairs, Johnny went straight to the basement of the villa. There were 4 women in rags locked up here. They were of different skin colors and identities. 3 of them were locals, and the other one was a blonde female reporter from New Zealand who had only been here for less than a week. They were wearing eye masks and were locked in cages. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the dying body struggled and twisted, accompanied by whimpers of pleading and the clatter of iron chains. Panting, Johnny unbuckled the belt on his pants. At this moment, he just wanted to vent all his anxiety into his hormones. ****, little cousins. The phone rang suddenly, startling the excited Johnny. He took out his cell phone and was about to throw it against the wall, but he saw the caller on the screen. Roberts' fingers began to tremble, and he instinctively wanted to hang up the phone. But after struggling for a moment, he swallowed his saliva and slowly pressed the answer button. "Hello. You answered the phone. I thought you would hang up." Roberts teased. ****, what the hell do you want to say? Johnny didn't have the temper he had when he first came to the Panu Islands, facing Roberts' humble attitude, and cursed back rudely. "Have you been drinking? You are worthy of being an Irish guy living in a barrel." Roberts sneered, cleared his throat, and then said, "Seriously, if you want to live, do what I say now. There is a small boat on the north coast of Kora Island. Take it and it will take you to Western Australia, where you will live a rich and ordinary life." For a long time, there was no response from the other end of the phone. Roberts was stunned, moved the phone away and glanced. "I don't know." When the phone was hung up, this ****. Smiling and shaking his head, Roberts ignored the guy and held the phone and called Jiang Chen. Chapter 325 The End of the Rebels. He refused. Roberts reported simply, "Yeah." Lying on the sun lounger, Jiang Chen lazily held the phone while looking at the calm coastline. Although it was a pity, it was also expected. After all, Johnny had enjoyed a life above thousands of people. It was obviously unrealistic for him to give up everything here and roll into a small corner to spend the rest of his life in obscurity just because of such a phone call. What's more, his wings have grown hard now, and it is natural for him to try to break free from the rope tied around his neck. ****, I don't understand. That kind of rubbish can be killed directly. Why make so much trouble? If he really accepts to go to Australia for retirement, do you really plan to let him go?" Roberts complained. "Johnny knows too much, and keeping him is definitely a hidden danger. It is a high probability that he will choose to refuse. But after all, he has made some contributions to my career, and leaving him a way out is a courtesy. Of course, he made the wrong choice, and I deeply regret it." Although when Jiang Chen said this, there was no regret on his face. "Okay. Let's not talk about that idiot. The Civil Liberties Party got beaten badly this time." Robert's tone was full of joking. You bought arms from others. How can you laugh at your customers like that?" Jiang Chen laughed. "I remember I taught that idiot who bought arms how to use the AD-4 rocket launcher, but I heard that idiot didn't even destroy an armored vehicle." Roberts cursed the idiot twice, but his voice was full of laughter. Because the more miserable they lose, the more beneficial it is for Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen smiled casually and did not respond to his words. Not a single armored vehicle was destroyed, which was beyond their expectations. According to Jiang Chen and Roberts' expectations, even if this group of rebels failed, they should be able to destroy 2 or 3 armored vehicles of the government army. If they are lucky, maybe they can also cause some trouble for the chieftain main battle tank. The fewer heavy equipment on the island, the more beneficial it will be for the next plan. The tropical climate can easily make people lazy. Although Jiang Chen had a mobile phone next to his ear, a trace of fatigue still floated across his brow. "Hello. Are you still listening?" Roberts asked after seeing no response for a long time. "Ah, yes. Well, leave the rest to me. 8 armored vehicles, a main battle tank, and 2 bird helicopters. Are you sure it's okay? Roberts asked doubtfully. Although he also participated in the establishment of Future Security Company, he was not clear about the specific details of the training. Although the training has been going on for almost half a year, the opponent is a regular army after all. Of course it's okay. Jiang Chen yawned and said, well, it seems that I'm overthinking. I won't disturb your nap, Roberts said jokingly, and hung up the phone. Don't say it's okay, it's better to say, it should be very easy. Putting the phone on the beach table, Jiang Chen stretched comfortably. His thoughts drifted away with his eyes, and all the muscles in his body were given to gravity, as if he had relaxed. Having had enough of the oppression of the wasteland and the yellow-green radioactive dust, the blue and white that came into his eyes made him feel particularly relaxed. If I live here for a lifetime, it must be a very happy thing. Jiang Chen muttered to himself, and closed his eyes. After staying in the apocalypse for a long time, the whole person will unconsciously be stained with a bit of hostility. However, in the sound of the waves in this southern country, this hostility was instantly diluted. Suddenly, a wisp of fragrance entered his nose. Soft skin gently touched his head. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Jiang Chen opened his eyes. As he expected, he saw that exotic face. It was Asia. Jiang Chen had just returned to this side of the world and asked her to come back. The sea breeze ruffled the slightly curly hair, and the white silk scarf outlined the petite and healthy curves. The waistline of the lower abdomen extended to the edge of the swimming trunks skirt. The white skin was so dazzling under the tropical sun. You're here? Jiang Chen smiled lazily. Ivan said you were here, so I came. Her green eyes were filled with gentle love. Aisha smiled shyly and gently hugged Jiang Chen's head from behind. Feeling the gentle touch on his cheek, Jiang Chen smiled contentedly. Are you used to the climate here? Aisha nodded gently, but what came out of her slightly open thin lips were words that had nothing to do with the previous words. I miss you. No matter how many times you hear it, it makes your heart beat. Yeah, me too. Gently pinching the little hand that was caressing her cheek, Jiang Chen kissed the back of her soft fingers. Her jade fingers trembled slightly, and Aisha's eyes were filled with intoxicating mist. She leaned over and kissed him lightly on the lips. Jiang Chen smiled knowingly, but he didn't say anything. He just quietly held her hand and looked at the line where the sea and the sky met. In the sound of the waves in this southern country, the two stayed until sunset. This is the southernmost tip of the Panu Islands. The tragedy that happened at the northern end of Koro Island did not disturb the tranquility of the southern end. The deep water port is sparsely populated, and the 2 berths are empty. Only a few seagulls through a few piles of bird shit. This small deep water port, which cost at least $5 million to build, may have been a failed investment from the beginning. Occasionally, a ship enters the port, mostly to unload goods at the warehouse of Xinghuan Trading Company. The situation on the island has been very turbulent recently. The government agencies are in chaos. The government army is searching the anti-government forces from house to house, causing panic on the island. The uprising failed within 12 hours. Everyone knew that the Civil Liberties Party was doomed, and they all distanced themselves from it. Although the insurgents did not hurt President Edward, an at-4 rocket accidentally hit his backyard and blew his carefully trimmed garden into pieces. Edward, furious, immediately ordered all the thugs to be hanged and ordered all residents to cooperate with the government soldier search. Anyone who dared to resist would be regarded as an accomplice of the thugs. Hello, Mr. Jiang. I wonder if you have seen, armed thugs. A Panu soldier wearing urban camouflaged combat uniform stood at the door of the warehouse and asked Jiang Chen. No locals are near here today, except my doorman. Jiang Chen smiled and replied to the soldier. Really? The soldier stretched his neck to look into the warehouse, but did not go in. Edward specifically told them not to offend these foreign investors during the search. The Panu Islands are now in the development stage and urgently need to introduce foreign investment, bribery. If this commotion affects the investment value assessment of these capitalists on Panu, it will be a big deal. Although we received intelligence that several Liberal Party members fled to the southern end of Koro Island, there is no evidence that those people must have fled here. The soldier looked at Jiang Chen twice for the last time, then called his comrades beside him and left. Looking at the back of the jeep going away, Jiang Chen smiled slightly, then turned back to the warehouse. "Thank you." Zhang Yaping, who walked out of the shadows behind the warehouse door, stood in front of Jiang Chen with a pale face and bowed deeply to him. "Sweat, group 1 is full. Sorry for those who didn't join the group. I created another one. Group 1. 482,875,504. Full. Group 2. 518,159,612. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.